Without a Trace, Season 3 Thoughts. This video contains spoilers, including for the earlier seasons, and it's a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. So let us jump right into it. The first episode of the season. In the Dark. And the episode goes into how difficult it is to live with a disability, including blindness, especially if you weren't born with it, and how for some guys wanting to be with a girl can turn really ugly. So there at the start where Kelly's point of view, that's pretty freaking horrifying. It's right about a horror movie or something. Honestly, I'd watch that. Although I will admit that's kind of exploitative, whatever, however you pronounce that word. But yeah, that has to be a horror movie already. Like, considering how long we've been making horror movies, which is literally as long as movies have been getting made, there has to have been someone who made a movie about a character who has, yeah, that has to be a thing. I had legit forgotten that we actually saw Martin and Samantha not only in bed together, but right in the middle of it, as it were. Martin keeps trying to kiss her while she's on the cell, and then after she hangs up, and Vivian walks up to handle the press like a boss. And the girl playing Kelly does really great acting playing blind, and I really love the filming and editing. Let's see. Yeah, once she was alone, when Luz was a little bit away, you really got the sense that she can maybe feel like wind on her face, and if she touches anything with her hands, she can tell what that is slightly. But other than that, she really does not have any idea what's going on anywhere near her. You really get the sense that she has not been able to cope. She and is frustrated with that. She is having a lot of trouble really, finding a way to make things work now that she can't see. And Paul Schultz, I watched let's see. Yeah, I watched the Rambo 4, just recently as of, yeah, 3 weeks ago when I recorded notes for this, for this episode, when I watched it 3 weeks ago. Yeah, rewatched the 2008 Rambo since, the new one was coming out, and yeah, he appears in the episode very shortly after his name appears on screen. So, if I was the type 2, I would definitely think that there was some kind of grand plan for me so frequently happening to watch something, to watch one thing in, very close to watching another thing with a similar idea or the same actor or something. Both in the opening where she disappears and in the flashback and into the kitchen, you really feel Kelly's pain, although I guess some would say she's being really obnoxious, but I'm not in that camp. Excuse me. I was born without sight, so I never knew any different, but her, she knows what she's missing. It kind of hurts to see Kelly smile with Tito when you know how basically no one except the two of them, what does that say? Want the two to be together or something like that. I'm not always able to proofread these notes. Did not expect the Shermanator to turn up. Getting a divorce argument. Somehow the kids are always the first to know. The waiter Trent Barker did not show up to work, and it's the first time he's missed a shift. Very suspicious. And he's recognized by Tito via the Employee of the Month placard Bet you wish you were a worse employee now, don't you? How do you take your tea? In a cup if you have one. If not, I can just pour it directly down my throat. I'm hardcore like that. And Martin claimed to be going to the bathroom, but really he goes to check out Trent's room, which has some kind of creepy imagery, including a porcelain doll of a blind girl and a picture of a woman with a snake going through her eyes. And he's drawn her in his book and wrote her name. And Samantha has to keep Trent's mother from walking back to check on Martin. And Jack's lawyer says that Maria intentionally told him she wanted a divorce the night before they left so that she can keep the kids. And we cut to, what does that say? We see, let's see. Yeah, Kelly has got some blood on the side of her face, and the camera again stays very close to her, and the editing is very disorienting, so it again gets across how difficult it is for her to get by. I gotta admit, part of me wishes that way more of the show was like this. Like, I'm sure there are shows, and I'm sure it gets gimmicky, but I can't. It's when, you know, this is not the only episode that's done this so far, but sometimes they will have like the paranoia when David Eichenberg is, thinking UFOs. Wait, is that this season or was that the season before? Anyway, yeah, they really capture these very distinct, and it does kind of feel it's too bad that for most of for most of what I watched of the show, and I'm not sure how far I watched past this season. It really does not do very much. Like it tends to stay close to, I don't know if you can really say normal, but like what American viewers of TV shows expect, and it really, yeah. Oh, the guy actually did hit her with the car. I thought by the way that it cut that it somehow claimed that he magically managed to stop in time, which really would be ridiculous considering how close they were. I swear, until they said she was hit by a car, I thought, oh, come on, it can't possibly have stopped. But yeah, I mean, it would take, it's a TV show. They only have so much time to film and edit. And with how much extra effort they had to put into the blindness sequences, they certainly wouldn't also be able to, I can certainly imagine, they wouldn't also be able to actually properly get, like, film it so that we see her getting hit by the car. But it did still, like, I feel like maybe if it cut to black and then we heard that the car hit, but instead it just cuts away, cuts to commercial, I think. So the guy hit her with the car and then dropped her off at the hospital nearby. And Jack mentions so Maria wants sole custody. And Ed tells Jack that he has to get his old job back since it'll help the custody case. And one of the two missing people is back. And Trent finally comes into work, and Martin was waiting for him. Cool mirror shot. The DP must have been feeling adventurous or something. Not sure it particularly matters to the episode or themes or anything, but yeah, it was cool. I don't mind. If that kind of thing had like taken over, excuse me, that would have been really. But yeah, the way it is isn't too much. And Martin questions Vivian's decision to put Kelly on the phone. With Trent, not a good look to question the new boss' decision on her very first day, but it is kind of on brand for him to mess up on day one of the boss, and it's probably at least in part because Vivian used to be on the same level as him, basically, instead of his boss. So, if he was questioning her decision before she became the new boss, it wouldn't be so insulting. It would, you know, I'm not saying it wouldn't be insulting at all, but they do sometimes question each other's decisions when they're on the same level. But yeah, excuse me. Kelly goes off script, understandably, on the phone to Trent, and Trent lawyers up. And Jack doesn't tell Vivian what's going on just yet. You know what? If Jack were here, we'd be talking to him right now. He'd be the first one through that door. All right? And let's see, they pressure Trent by telling him how bad the court case would be for him. Okay, I swear, every single time we see Kelly in a flashback, it's an even better scene than the last one. This time, in addition to the camera staying close to her, we also see the things near her that make a sound that throw her off. Just, yeah. An entire show with her as the protagonist would get old. But maybe if they made like a heroes type show with like ensemble, and sometimes a while passes between us seeing characters, and then one of them is blind like Kelly, maybe one of them's deaf. Just, and they could do things with like with a lot of silence, and then occasionally there'd maybe be a sound to signify that they get like like let's say that a wasp flies by real quick. They could have a really loud sound of a wasp, not because you can suddenly hear it, but because it's so close that it's overpowering almost. That, yeah, if anybody's listening who can make this happen, make this happen. And if anybody's watching who has seen it made happen, please let me know, because I want to watch that show. Yeah. That was the first time she was ever nice to me. And Trent knew about the camping because he walked near when Kelly asked Tito if the two of them could sneak off together. So Lot's like basically the worst person in the history of man, according to Trent's flashback to him. And they bring Kelly, and she helps them find the place, buy the stuff that's close, going all Taken 2 on us. I do kind of like the scene in this. It was ridiculous in Taken 2, but here help, somebody help me, don't care how you do it. And Lewis and Kelly hug. And Vivian chews out Martin and Danny. And Vivian says she would have at least have considered it if they'd asked. Honestly, at first I thought Samantha would tell Martin it was a one-time thing, but she doesn't, and they of course walk out at slightly different times to not make it too obvious. And Vivian looks at Jack's plaque, and Jack comes to the office, exiting the elevator. In the Dark is a very appropriate title. Now, I feel like I found it very credible, the whole thing with Trent and Lot, that basically Trent wants her more than he wants her to want him. That really, I mean, yeah, he is essentially a stalker, and or obsessed with her at the very least. And Lot is the kind of person who, what's the term? Like, he basically thinks that women owe, if a man is attracted to a woman, that woman owes that man sexual favors, especially if that man has wanted that woman for a long time, even if she doesn't know. Now, and yeah, the Kelly's pain at trying to cope, I suppose some would say not trying hard enough to cope with blindness, is really, really devastating. And yeah, I may be in the minority, but I do think that it manages to not slip into emotional porn and that kind of thing, sensationalism, but that it does manage to, excuse me, that it's you really empathize with her. And like with the first two, this is a great season opener. Okay, this is getting, there we go. And okay, thou shalt not, which I'll admit that those words should probably make me think of the Ten Commandments, but it's the first thing it makes me think of is Homer not being able to memorize a single Bible verse. Maureen, you're gonna be here tomorrow, right? It hurts less when you clean it. I'll be here. Man, the show just knows how to stick it in, twist it, break it off, and then throw a little salt for good measure. To help or not to help? That is the question. And Vivian doesn't want to tell Martin what's going on with Jack. Yeah, right. What's going on with Jack, at least yet. The Lord has given us everything we want, except a cell phone. Luke so obviously knows something. He keeps looking away. I talked to OB last night and they need people. So she suggests to, what is that? Yeah, that she go OBGYN instead. That or OB-Trice, I guess. And Samantha is very surprised that Jack is in the office when she calls. 11 months. I suck at math. Why shouldn't you suck at math? You're a vertebrate. And she dances to Sweet Home Alabama. And says she doesn't dance much anymore. What an Alabama. Maureen is one fun drunk. And she took a trip to West Virginia. Not Mom. Don't tell anyone. So did you tell anyone? And we're told they bombed an abortion clinic and changed names. And Danny starts to draw his gun, but it's too late. Husband hits him over the head to get away. Wherever Mr. Grady is, he's got cash and a gun. 15 years since the bombing and the clinic's still going strong. And the landlord is old and easily confused, so he doesn't know anything said, only that they were arguing. Not a bad way to handle that. There you go. Third character in the show I'm trying to pitch here. Old man, so the audience really has to work hard to figure out what's going on in his scenes, or something like that. Just, yeah, it would get gimmicky if this show did a new one every episode, but I do really enjoy when they do it. And I mean, I guess ultimately that is kind of the thing. I think an entire movie with Kelly, or like if she wasn't missing for so much of the episode, if it wasn't just these brief glimpses, maybe that would get excessive. It would be difficult to make sure it didn't get excessive. So this is the exact right way to tell this story. They were building a bomb. And they're now making a bomb specifically to hurt people, where the old one was to take out the building, not meant to hurt anyone. And that is, people who go out of their way to hurt other people, or certainly cause violence. To be fair, they weren't trying to hurt people, but they were trying to do something violent. They do tend to gradually escalate, as long as they keep going until they're stopped. And Jack feels bad about taking the job back from Vivian, and Maureen wanted to turn herself in. Some birthday present, huh? I was gonna say that if he hadn't. Luke, 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 Luke's. That's all I got. Ask me about Luke if you're in trouble. How's Luke? Clever girl. Yeah, guy. And Jack acts like he's in charge, but then does end up saying, "But it's your call," to Vivian. And Martin and Samantha pose to get in so they can watch from inside. And Samantha said she was pregnant once before and that she doesn't have any children, and Martin looks at her briefly, wondering if she's telling the truth there. And Samantha checks door by door, and the bomb is on Maureen's back. Don't thank me yet, I still have to put these on you. And Maureen is shot, and Samantha spots the shooter on the roof. And flashback to Maureen, she sees the burnt woman forgiving her. Vivian gets the call that Jack is back in black, so she needs to pack. Presumably there will be no attack. It's been a really sad day. I just want to go home. And by the episode's end, we don't know. The shooter is still out there. I forget. I think there was at least one episode this season that didn't play on the DVD for me. But other than that, I guess I'm not sure we've seen the shooter again since then. But it might show up in the next season. And yeah, some of the episodes about right-wing extremists bombing abortion clinics, at first to destroy the clinic, later also to badly injure or even kill the people inside. Yeah, here we go. Here's the David Eigenberg episode. Light Years. Light Years. There we go. Making sure the time code fits. And hello, Sci-Fi Channel. What's your relationship with him? Professional? Do you mean, did he take my x-rays? That's what the kids are going on with these days. And Jack gets served. I can say Mugu Gai Pan with perfect pronunciation. I love David Eigenberg so much. No homo. Just he's so like his kind of, he has this charm of the, like, he can be self-deprecating without coming across as like just pathetic or obnoxious about it. And there is, and yeah, just absolutely love his scenes. And Teddy was fixated on an object in his brain, kept x-rays of his own head in his place. Oh, right, I forgot. Excuse me, let me just briefly pretend I'm an airplane, or at least check. Yeah, I'm gonna have to turn the camera just, or have to, I'm going to. There we go. Make sure that I'm as centered as possible, even though I lean to the left. They're going to use your affair with Spade to say you're an unfit parent. Marie has been planning this for a very long time. The group of alien abducted sure are presented as ridiculous, but then I suppose they are. It is a pretty ridiculous thing to, yeah. You're not like Men in Black, the movie? That's pretty funny. Which, I mean, that might actually be like a reference, because the guy who draws the comic, I don't know if it's still going on. The first time he got the idea, the first time someone explained the idea of the Men in Black to him. So, like, someone connecting the term more with the movie then the idea, yeah, it's, I don't know if it's a reference or if it's just that other people also, excuse me, I think I found out about the idea via the movie. Duncan genuinely believes that it is the Men in Black. And Samantha looks like she doesn't know about X-Files and Mulder and Scully either. And things were a little tense between Jack and Vivian. And Leo thinks that the stories are Teddy's way of dealing with the death of his parents at age 10. When I resist them, they hurt people close to me. Innocent people, Leo. And Kevin also believes it's aliens. I mean, certainly Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection can hurt a lot to watch, but you just gotta stick with the first two. And this kid is definitely covering for someone. Either that or we're gonna have to open up our minds. Shut up. You do not speak unless I tell you to speak. And according to the report, Teddy did not get hurt in the car accident at all. So what happened? I shot him. And cut to commercial. Bet you're gonna stick around to find out what he's talking about, aren't you? And we're told that Leo and then Teddy were abused sexually by Leo's father. Leo tried to kill the father, but a bullet fragment from the shotgun ended up in Teddy's head. Are we not talking? Is that what's going on here? You say all the time that we should talk. I'm talking right now, in fact. But I'm going to stop talking in a moment. I really hope you're going to say something. Okay, here I go. And Vivian confronts Jack about his personal life. And the headlights from the cars clearly upset Teddy. Call me crazy, but maybe don't approach the guy who's worried about Men in Black wearing black suits. Wear something more casual or something. And Jack asked Eddie to tell him how he was abducted. And Jack says it was planes landing, not an abduction. Danny tells Jack to stop, and he was clearly already bothered by this. And Samantha suggests she come by Martin's apartment later. And we see Jack with the divorce papers. I think the episode does a really good job. Again, so far all three of these episodes have had at least one. Yeah, it really feels like, when the audience doesn't believe that it's aliens. If this was the first episode of the show, maybe. But we've seen, two entire seasons at this point with nothing that couldn't happen in the real world. So, excuse me, and certainly the way the episode shows the support group, I guess, for people who, yeah, been abducted. They, yeah, clearly the people making the episode think that people like that are ridiculous, or at least can be. So we don't actually believe that it's aliens, but we do, yeah, we do wonder. It's like was it again, I forget if that's this season. No, whatever. Jerry O'Connell, I want to say is the actor's name, where he's like, crap, let me think. He is that thing of like his, wow, I cannot believe, I don't really remember. Yeah, there was that thing where he thinks that there's a certain person going after him, and in reality, it was like the like this guy. What's it called? Like an exterminator or something. and they again do, you know, they do a great job on the show of making, you know, putting us right in the head of a character, which I'm just gonna make sure to write to put in the review notes. Some episodes put us in character heads. It does tend to be the missing character. But yeah, let me think. There's, yeah, and you know, it is true that a lot of people, especially if the trauma is when they're children, they start having, you know, they kind of try to turn it into something, yeah, like yeah, they focus on something else. And for him it was alien abduction, since, let me think, it was comic books, right? He got the idea, he was focused on alien abductions because he read comic books. So when the stepfather sexually assaulted him, he turned that into an alien abduction. Or was it just the very last time it happened? I guess when he thinks back, he thinks that he was abducted for a very long time, or something like that. And so when he sees children with bruises or the like, he, in his, wait, or am I combining that with, am I thinking of the Jerry O'Connell episode? I might be thinking of the Jerry O'Connell episode. But yeah, but he said that he was afraid that they would hurt his child. That was his reaction when he found out that his girlfriend was pregnant. So it definitely is, yeah. Which brings us to the next episode, Upstairs, Downstairs. And the episode is about the power imbalance between the rich and those that work directly for them, and rich people being forced into choices that either make them rich or keep them rich. You sit there watching the episode going, the baby doesn't disappear, does it? Does it? And then the baby disappears. And you've never been involved. Involved. And I think the father character is played by Andrew something or other, who played Garrick on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. See, my mind couldn't decide if it was going to go with Star or Deep, and then it became Dar instead of Steep. Under the Brooklyn Bridge. Where, they mean the water? Hey, no fair Miss T3 King yourself. That's my job. So June got her sister to pretend to be a kidnapper so that June would have more time to get away with Nikki, since she had found out that Terry was abusing Nikki. She would never do anything to harm her child. With other children, she is vicious. I can't deal with this right now. I don't know what to do with her. Maybe I'll find out in the ADR booth. And Jack talks to one of the daughters, but the other one doesn't want to talk to him. Just tell her I send a big hug and kiss her, okay? Sorry, I cannot impersonate Jack's voice. We found your daughter. I'm sorry to say that she's dead. Dead infant, and yeah, almost even shows the little pale white dead face. That is in pretty bad taste. And they find June on the bus, $40,000 in a backpack. And June asks to talk to Lawrence, even demands it. I like how June, like, you keep, you see her in these situations where certainly other people perceived her to be kind of like she didn't really know her place. She, like, the tasting caviar, for example. And you also see, well, Terry kept treating her really, so she got to a point where she expected that it was okay. And again, I mean, it's not like she was like breaking stuff or stealing or something. And didn't she say that the caviar that Terry told her it was okay if she ate caviar, or was that, I don't remember. It's not like, man, now I want to, like a alternate version without a trace where people are always lying in their flashbacks, so the audience has to try to figure out what a person is really like based on the, like, commonalities in flashbacks from different people who are lying from different angles. Again, that probably does exist. Again, please tell me in the comments section if that exists, because that sounds like, yeah. There was no abuse. This was an accident. And Terry accidentally killed Nikki by falling asleep on top of her. And now we do see the pale white dead face for several seconds. That's really messed up. I don't remember if I put that in the review already. So let me just real quick. Some bad taste stuff. There it is. And Lawrence threatens to lie and say that June intentionally killed Nikki. They did nicely set up the idea of Terry accidentally killing Nikki like that, because earlier we did see that she was lying down while breastfeeding, and we saw her lying on top of Nikki just that there was enough space between them that Nikki could still breathe. But she's also been falling asleep very suddenly and the like. So this was the two things happening at the same time, and yeah, she probably was thinking, I'll breastfeed her, but I'll just lie down. That's fine. And then she fell asleep very suddenly. So yeah, it it feels very like a, the audience could almost kind of figure out that that was what had really happened. And the you know let's see, you can really understand why June ran, but as they point out, it made her look more guilty. Excuse me. They have the money and power. What do I have? Certainly not a taste for caviar, that's for sure. And Jack misses his daughters. But yeah, I thought it did a really good job exploring the power imbalance. The I mean, when you think about it, you might almost agree with the characters when you first, when they describe, oh, June, she didn't know her place, and she was like, but when you stop and think about it, I mean, she ate a little caviar, and again, it's not like she was stealing or breaking things or the like. No, Terry treated her like a member of the family, so she started acting like a member of the family. Although, of course, early on we are told that she, kidnapped the baby, and early on it does seem like maybe that was what happened. And then they reveal, then they have the thing of, June believed that Terry was abusing the baby, and that also feels like, at this point we've already seen that Terry is like, she's regretted some of the choices, or feels like she was forced to make them again, because I think she wasn't she already rich, but it was a way to make sure to keep being rich or something like that. So yeah, you do start to wonder, does she resent this baby? If she doesn't, she's not in love with her husband, and she wishes she was with, the gardener, I want to say it was. So maybe she is willing to, yeah, that is unfortunate. That is sometimes true. Parents hurt their own children because their children remind them of the other parent. American Goddess. I'm fairly certain that they made up that name, but it does really sound like the name of a reality show, and the way they describe the reality show, it sounds like something that might almost exist. Again, honestly, it might, or might have. I don't pay attention to reality shows. And it's about a young woman trying to fix her problems with a makeover, only to find that it doesn't fix things. This is an episode I've always remembered for years after last watching it, and I think the themes are important, even if, they're not necessarily handled very subtly in the episode, but I do really love this episode. I think, I hope a lot of people, I'm not, I don't have some idea that a lot of people are watching this today. That's not what, I'm not making these videos in some, people who watch TV today expect much faster moving TV, much bigger, production value and such. I'm basically making this for other people who watched it way back when and who still love it, even if, yeah, I don't watch stuff that's on TV today. But yeah, I hope a lot of people watched it back when back when people were watching the show who aren't me, and I hope a lot of people really took it to heart. Are you kidding? You look perfect. And that's the theme of the episode. And a woman heckles Lynette, saying that she's a piece of plastic and a freak. I appreciate that that it makes sense that they have that character in the opening, and it does work as this kind of, sometimes the part of the episode before the very, very opening, when we see a person go missing, sometimes there's like an inciting incident or something. There's that we then like that's what made the person go missing. And I really appreciate in an episode like this that, they're like, well, where was the heckler? We have witnesses placing her. She has an alibi. She couldn't possibly have been directly involved. So, so that they don't spend a while on that, because ultimately there's really no reason to spend a lot of time on something like that. It's essentially just she's saying what a lot of people are thinking. She is that person who tells someone who are insecure about their appearance, you don't look good enough. She probably actually thinks that it is like a, yeah, so I just rewatched the Dark Knight trilogy. I swear I'm going somewhere with this. In the first movie, Katie Holmes says, revenge is not about justice. It's not about what's right. It's about making yourself feel better. This heckler was just making herself feel better. She wanted to say these things, so she did. She didn't actually change anybody's mind. That, she just brought it was just that, Lynette, the yeah, it makes her feel bad. And it's just her saying things that Lynette was already thinking. It's just that it hurts more when someone else says it as well as you already thinking it. And yeah, I think it was a very, it's painful, but that's most, I guess, episodes of the show do open with a very painful situation. It makes a lot of sense that it's the inciting incident sort of thing, and it also right there really puts you in the headspace of what this episode is going to be about. Hypothetically, let's say there was no heckler. She gave the presentation and nothing bad happened, and then she disappeared. It just wouldn't have had the same effect. And again, I understand people who say that it goes into the territory of emotional porn. I don't think so. I think it manages to, it hits the balance. It could have, but yeah, at the end of the day, she still doesn't feel quite good about the way she looks. Other people tell her she looks amazing, but then every so often, someone either says that she still doesn't look good enough, or that her looking good is not like that there are problems. Maybe even the fact that she does look good now is a problem, kind of thing. Now, they do a really great job balancing living up to beauty standards and looking overly plastic, which is obviously very important for the episode to work. And they also didn't make the before picture portion look far too different from the after picture. You can believe that this is the same person, that they managed to make her look that different. It is not the same actress. It is, that would have been, they wouldn't have been able to do that kind of thing with, you know, again, they have a very short amount of time to shoot an episode, so a person couldn't be. I don't think even Christian Bale could, and he almost definitely shouldn't make that much of a transformation in that short of time. But let me think. I was gonna say something else. Let me think. Right. Yeah. I just briefly want to say, yeah. She's the character is played by Elizabeth Berkley, and basically the see, it's always such a minefield. In real life, she is attractive, but in this episode, they put just a little bit too much makeup on and made a little bit too much, by the standards of, the people, yeah, the fictional people doing her makeup in the episode, in the story, within the story of the episode, went a little bit too far. But the real life people doing the makeup nailed it, because it's not so much that it doesn't get to be like ugly. It doesn't. It's not. Yeah, you could believe that some people would be attracted to a look like this, and that she would be able to look in the mirror and not think that it was awful. I forget what's that movie called. It's got like Donald, not Donald Pleasance, but he played President Snow in the Hunger Games movies. He's the father of the 24th Jack Bauer guy. Anyway, there's this movie from decades ago. I do not remember what it's called, and I think it's like 3 hours long, which I do remember loving it. Anyway, it's about how awful Hollywood is, and it paints a picture. It really makes it look incredibly ugly and hollow. And there's a female character in that. And I'm not saying it was necessarily a bad decision for that movie, but they make her look like bad. They put so much makeup on her that it looks like a parody. You know, it almost kind of like a Joker thing. It like someone making fun of beauty standards. I'm not saying that was a bad decision for that movie. I think it works. But that's what I'm saying. They didn't go that far. You know, that movie isn't really. I gotta watch that movie again. I just remember it as being freaking depressing, and I'm not really looking to watch something depressing. But I do remember it as being a really, really good movie. But yeah, you know, so there is a balance there, and I think they nailed it here. That's good if you want your daughters to think plastic surgery is the answer to everything. Subtle. And your compassion is overwhelming. Excuse me. And we hear the three increasingly angry phone messages. I do quite like literally at first it is just, oh, just, you know, we have a date tonight, just making sure, you know. And then like messages 2 and 3 get really, yeah. And a guy asked for an autograph. Those doctors did an amazing job. Is there a reason they didn't do your ears? Your ears are perfect. You look great. Perfect. Great. Great. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch. And of course, the thing with this, if she doesn't actually feel better, she's going to be as insecure as she was before the makeover. And that's really, again, yeah, it's not subtle. I completely grant that, but it is an important message. The moment, you know, like people who are comfortable with the way they look don't, they aren't that bothered by if someone says, that that some part of them doesn't look great or something. But people who are insecure, there's always going to be something, and yeah, every so often, someone will point out, oh, what about the ears though? And on the other hand, you have hecklers who say she looks like plastic, so it is, which again, there are some people, let's see, I don't, who would be a good, see, a lot of my references are super out of date. I'm just going to go with Paris Hilton. I wouldn't rule out that if you looked Paris Hilton deep in the eyes and said, "You're a piece of plastic," she'd be like, "Thanks, I work real hard for that." Yeah. What can I say? Super out of date reference. I know. I don't really know. I don't pay attention to celebrity. Back when Paris Hilton was a thing, I paid attention to celebrity because other people did, and they expected me to be able to have conversations with them about it. But yeah, and her mother didn't want her to do the show. I'm not going to defend Showgirls. I mean, I wouldn't if I had watched it, which obviously I haven't, duh. But I do think Elizabeth Berkley gives a good performance in this episode. I guess Gordon is no longer with Rose. And Paul really comes off as a quote-unquote nice guy. And she asks the doctor to have her ears done. Let me real briefly say, I feel like when I watched this when I was younger, I thought that the part at the end where she said she wanted to have you know, she wanted them to undo all the plastic surgery work. She wanted to look the way she used to. I think when I was younger, I read that, as, keeping in mind, when I first watched this episode, that was 15 years ago, cut me some slack here. I think that I thought that after the end of the episode, and she wouldn't necessarily be happy, but she would maybe, but no, it's right there in the text. no doctor will do surgery on her except for this one who's, a hack. He uses this really bad anesthetic or something like that, which makes her, causes like allergic reactions. So no, she's never going to, no one is going, no one competent is going to do surgery on her, so she's never going to look the way she used to look. And, you might say she's now trapped in this body where she still doesn't feel secure. She still doesn't feel comfortable about herself. And, maybe down the line, there's a chance that she might become more comfortable, but her appearance is never changing, not back to the way it was. They're not doing her ears. They're not touching anything. And I don't know a lot about plastic surgery, but it's possible that that is a thing, that there's like, that after a while they say we're not going to do any more surgeries on you. Elizabeth Berkley really gets across the insecurity of someone who doesn't feel attractive, although she does live up to current beauty standards. I really feel like that's, you know, I'm really glad they didn't cast like one of the Baywatch actresses or something, because early 2000s they were getting roles in stuff without the acting talent to back it up. The I just recently rewatched. Wait, was that? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's early 2000s. If not, it's very late 90s. I watched the sequels. I watched all three. I watched all three Candyman movies. And the second one doesn't get everything wrong. There are some great things in the second movie. And there are some good things in the third. There are. But they cast one of the Baywatch actresses, and I'm sorry, maybe she's gotten better since, but she could not act at that time. And it's just like they put a really attractive woman in the lead, basically just to try to. And doesn't that movie also have one of the Showgirls actresses? I'm told, I haven't watched that movie. Just the yeah, to attract more viewers. And I mean, the first movie, it's also an attractive woman, but she's also a good actress. She does a really great job. I forget which, I want to say, is it maybe, it's not Michael Madsen's sister, right? Virginia Madsen. It's that other one. For some reason, I always mix up Virginia Madsen and that other, I feel like, who's also like a sister of a male actor who has like a real, who's very famous. I don't know. Anyway, and the second one, you know, again, attractive woman, but pretty good actress. Maybe not amazing, but certainly better. And yeah, then you have that, and I want to say is maybe Bordello of Blood, where Erika Eleniak, I want to say it is, whose name I only remember because it's kind of distinct sounding. Just yeah, I mean, when they put Tracy Bingham in Demon Knight, they didn't give her a role where she had to act. She's just there to look pretty, to be alluring to a man. That, and that is something yeah. So just, you know, yeah, I'm really glad that this episode actually did come out after Showgirls, didn't it? Actually, I guess that's why she did a TV appearance. Otherwise, she would have been like, "Come on, I'm doing movies." Yeah. Again, not saying she. I don't. What was that other thing she was on? Saved by the Bell. I feel like I watched that, but I don't remember a single thing about it. Yeah, but I have seen the clip of, I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so scared. But I'm not sure I probably wouldn't have seen that if not for the, let's see, certainly Nostalgia Chick, when she did the video on Showgirls, showed that clip. I feel like Nostalgia Critic showed that clip at some point as well, but I forget. Please sit. This gratuitous ass shot is ridiculous. And she says, I could show you the pictures in advance. Would you like that? Just, she doesn't, she has so little self-confidence. She has this, like, yeah, she doesn't have a lot of self-respect. It's very clear. And Lynette realizes that Bruce is attracted to her, and her mother thought Lynette was trying to seduce Bruce. I'm your mother. That didn't stop you? It's always stopped me from doing anything. That's why you didn't want me to be an American goddess, because I might get noticed for once. Christine Rose and Elizabeth Berkley both do great acting in the flashback where she slaps her. Samantha, in that guy's defense, you didn't know you were FBI until you ended the call he was in. I know he looks super rude, but I mean, excuse me. I thought it looked bad. Well, it does. We have your DNA on file, so she will know how bad. And Danny tries to appeal to Dawn with sleaze. Whatever it is, I can fix it. It's so telling how the various men react to after picture Lynette. Yeah, let me just briefly, you've got the guy who, let's see, he liked her already, but now that she's also very attractive, he reads into it that it's mutual attraction. And you have the real sleazebag who just sees someone, he doesn't see a person, he just sees, what's that, what Charlie Harper might accidentally call a vagina that talks. And let's see, yeah, and her stepfather, yeah, he can't look past, yeah, she looks, she now conforms to beauty standards, but it's, she's like, you're with her mother. It's not, yeah. And then let's see, what was the, let me think. Yeah, actually, I guess that is right. Sorry, and the fan who wanted an autograph, who, I mean, he basically, it's almost like, it's like if he was approaching an author who he really liked, and they were, he wanted him to autograph the most recent, like, maybe he was doing a series of like crime novels, and he asks him, why did the killer turn out to be this person? It really seemed like it was going to be this other person. Is there a reason you made that choice or something? Something where you can kind of distance yourself from. Ultimately, I know writers say that, oh, it's my baby, but at the end of the day, you can, maybe author is the wrong, maybe more like the publisher, someone who doesn't have quite as personal attachment to the project, but you can't talk to someone who's had plastic surgery and basically almost say they should have done more. That's incredibly just, yeah. And that's the thing. The moment that, she was on a reality show and she had all this work done, so people are thinking of her as a success story based on the fact that she now looks pretty. So when he finds a flaw, he feels like it's okay for him to point it out. you know, like, yeah, I think I'm standing by the publisher novel, crime novel thing is as the best kind of, yeah, you know, you can do that with that something like a book, but you can't do it with someone's appearance. But reality television and plastic surgery put the idea in people's heads that, yeah, you know, it's entirely, it's okay to judge someone based on their appearance, and it is, what's the term, and that's something that just you can just fix that, you know. 12 hours before she went missing, she's been rejected by her mother, her best friend, the man of her dreams, and her plastic surgeon. Everyone. All she wanted was to be loved. And Danny points out she probably destroyed the makeup room herself, where up to that point we had thought it was a violent kidnapping. And Lynette asks to be returned to the way she used to look. So Lynette was in the room recovering, she just didn't tell anybody. And she had an allergic reaction to the anesthetic, and he didn't take her to the hospital because he was practicing without a license. And we close on the tape of her saying that her life would be so much better if she could only change the way she looks. So, let's see. Nickel and Dimed Part 1. Now, let's see. And it's about a poverty-stricken single mother and the way she's treated by the people who have more power than her. I assume that's Jake. No, we brought in an unrelated child in here just for fun. Colleen suddenly has a lot of extra money and doesn't say how. And there wasn't a training class, so she didn't come into work. And I don't know if that's the right name. So yeah, so someone tells Jack he has to wait until they're on break, but he sets him straight. And it makes like a tiger sound, like in the Amazon or something. Or so, it makes, yeah, whatever. It sound like Amazon or something, one of those huge businesses that treat employees really poorly. Look, I'll do whatever you want. That does sound like prostitution, but it's vague enough it could be something else. Well, all her stuff's at the hotel. If she left, why didn't she take it with? And the reason only Nora knows about Jake is that they don't want to hire mothers, as if mothers don't also need income. So the key that Colleen has was for Mr. Fortman's door. I'm not 100% certain that it's like whether or not it's legal for them to just try the key without having a warrant to search for something. And Samantha despises Fortman. And there's a real theme on the show, the powerful treating the powerless as badly as they can get away with, and sometimes even worse. I feel like that probably already is in my review notes, but just in case. Powerful. Treat powerless poorly. I appreciate that every so often there will be an episode where one of the agents especially hate or especially have sympathy for a person of interest. and Jake needs a $500 hearing aid. This is a problem in real life for people who don't have a lot of money, sudden, expenses like that. The guy drives away on the motorcycle, does that same turn with it that the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator character does in the first 3 Terminator movies. So that's what the noise complaint was about. Samantha trying to get information out of the 3-year-old Jake is absolutely heartbreaking. And Colleen turns to stealing, so fires her. This case is really getting to the audience too. And Danny sees Martin tenderly touch Samantha. If it's not yours, then why can't you stop looking at it? Normally, I'm entirely on Samantha's side, but dude, you're waving a needle in her face. Of course she's going to be focusing on it, whether or not she uses it. Just like, it's a needle. Like, if it was a pipe, if it was like a crack pipe or something, okay, you've got a point. But it's like, nobody is going to be calm with someone having a needle that close to their face. That's just, yeah. There were drugs in the backpack, and Jeanette took some. And they would do awful things to Colleen if she doesn't get the bag back. Excuse me. I gave detailed statements. I'm sure you've seen them. I'd like to hear it from you. That'll make the flashback feel more natural. And the bus driver was the one who gave her the toy bus. And Samantha kind of snaps at Vivian for going home. And the suspect is the same guy. Excuse me. They know for sure threatened her in the motel room. And Samantha tells Jack she knows how to find the guy. Very sad episode. Now, let me think. Yeah, seems like I did put it in the review notes then. And a couple of other things. Yeah. I guess. Yeah, that's gotta be it. Okay, so. Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Okay, so. Can it be? There it is. Yeah, so Nickel and Dime Part 2. And it's about poverty-stricken young people used as drug mules. And Samantha suggests she temporarily go undercover. Jack isn't happy with the arrangement, but he agrees on condition that if he says she's done, she puts up immediately. Samantha finds the crayon, imagines Colleen playing with Jake. Again, we have a break from formula. We have an episode that ends without them having found the missing person. I really appreciate that every so often they will do something like this. And Samantha gets instruction to the job. And all I can think about is the dockyard. And Burbank was the one who hired them as drug mules. All you gotta do is deliver a package. So he's talking drug mule or UPS. I haven't heard from him in a week. He might not even be around anymore. If he's not, I'm gonna assume you've been lying to me, and you're gonna wish you hadn't. Whoops. Whoopsie. And Samantha talks to Amy. And Amy heard something Samantha can use. I'm scrawny, but I'm strong. I believe it. And Samantha says her body hurts from the machines. Jack massages her shoulders. Jack gives Samantha a flower to use to signal if she's in trouble. And Samantha spots. Yeah, we have brief flashbacks, clearly how he's working with them. I like these scenes where Samantha and Jack talk about the undercover stuff. They kind of remind me of similar scenes in Alias. And Jack wants to go up the food chain rather than go directly for John Barr. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of sleep too, since the two of them don't have each other to pass the night in more fun ways. Joanna is charming, and Samantha is sure that Joanna is the mule. All it takes is one tough break for them to fall off a cliff. And Samantha grew up with a working poor mother as well, so she sees herself in Amy. Joanna didn't show up for work today. We see Joanna was assaulted, and Martin poses as a pizza guy so he can update Samantha. They found Colleen's body in the river. And Samantha wants to go into work the next day, probably hoping that John Barr will try to find someone and she can find something out. And Samantha pretends to need more money with Brian so that Howie will recommend her for drug mule work. Listen, if I don't do this, the entire case is based on paper trails and sketches. Jack doesn't go along with it at first, but Sam pressures. And we see the flashback of Samantha, running away from home at 16. And John Barr comes into Samantha's place. Samantha agrees to be a drug mule. And things are tense between Samantha and Jack and Vivian. And Samantha helps Joanna deal with Les and uses some self-defense on him. Very, cathartic scene. It wouldn't have been difficult for the scene to have Les not come home while they were there, because Samantha did just tell him, we're only going to be here for 15 minutes, just take the most important stuff, and then we're going to leave. So they could have just had that be the scene. But no, Les comes home, and at first Joanna is scared, and then Samantha takes care of him. I firmly believe everyone should try to learn self-defense so that they can handle themselves in a situation like that. I'm not saying that everybody will be able to handle themselves, but I think it's good to try to get to that point where you can, because there's not, unfortunately, in a lot of situations, there isn't going to be someone there who can defend you. And the waitress says what she saw of Colleen. And Samantha takes the flower out of the window as the guy grabs her. I'm just worried about her. I know you are. Because he saw them, and it seems like he's not judging. And Vivian puts Les in a hole just like Samantha did. And I'm here for it. I hope it happens. When I saw that, I noted, I hope it happens a third time. And they're beating up Samantha, and Jack threatens John that he'll pretend he helped them. And Jack does make special note of Martin grabbing John like that, but he doesn't tell him to stop either. And Samantha runs away from the mobsters, and one of them has what looks like an AK-47 or something. And yeah, AK-47 fired at several of the agents. Must be sweeps week. And Amy is happy to see Samantha again. Amy is adorable, and Samantha calls her mother. And I really like the whole, you only hear Samantha's side, but it's easy to figure out what the mother says. You hear Samantha say, "Hi, Mom, it's me." And then right after, then she said, "No, there's nothing wrong. Yeah, so, something like that. And, obviously, yeah, she assumed that there was something wrong, that's why her daughter called her. And then she says, I know it has been a really long time since last we talked. And what was the, I feel like there's at least one more thing she said. Yeah, and, yeah, so, and then she says, just because I wanted to talk to you. So the mother asked, well, if nothing's wrong, why are you calling, given that it's been so long since you last called? Which brings us to Doppelgänger 2. Now, unlike the first one, this one did play for me off the DVD. So yeah, so keep in mind that I talked about, I talked about this, when I talked about the first part of this episode, I was not able to rewatch the original anytime recently because the DVD didn't play it. So all I've seen of the first Doppelgänger episode is the brief recap at the start of this episode. So if I get stuff wrong, that's why. And Rick helpfully has a name tag so we know which twin we're looking at. And she fades away in front of other people. Did they do that using green screen? Otherwise, well, regardless, very impressive, very convincing effect. Rick certainly does bait Martin and Jack. I really like the actor who plays the twins. I think I like him in everything I've seen him in. And Greg and his lawyer are contesting the confessions. The actress really does a great job setting up that Rick and Greg clearly are different people despite looking exactly the same. And they find her dead in Ned's trunk. And in Ned's apartment, they find Polaroids of the dead women. Let's see. Take pictures of everything, then put it back in the box and leave it where you found it. It's okay, I'll take the heat. So Greg is having dreams about things Rick did, and we're kind of getting into superstitious kind of territory about twins. Or wait, is it that he already knew, but he repressed the memory, I guess? He suspected it, but yeah. And Jack is confirmed without the pictures. I mean, I will say, someone calling someone who's a very shy person a mouse, it's a decent, like, you don't guess it before you see it, but yeah, so he dreams about mice. Because in his mind, that, Rick is still Mouse, that he knew him as Mouse for so long. Excuse me. Jack is confirmed about the pictures, and he takes the heat just like he said he would. Very nicely cut using split screen to make it appear that both of the twins are in the same place, even though there's only one actor. That could be it. What? That. See? Now you're being helpful. And Greg confronts Rick about various things. And Mother tells some surprising things about Rick and Greg. And we get a flashback to the interrogation from 1973. I will say, that scene I definitely recognized from, but again, it's been at least 10 years since I last watched these. It's been years since I last watched these. I guess the last time I possibly could have was like 2012 or something. I think I got the TV. I have a TV, but I use it to watch like DVDs and Blu-rays on. I don't get any TV channels. The young actor also does an excellent job. These are clearly two different people, different personalities, even though they're twins and even though they look exactly alike. And again, it's only one actor playing both roles. Greg and possibly others used to call Rick Mouse, probably because he was awkward, hence the mice in the dream. Jack is criticized by, I guess that guy's a supervisor or whatever, so he decides instead of following the twins, bring them in. We get another excellent split screen. I don't know if the first Doppelgänger episode did this, but it is an interesting break from formula that the missing people are found so early, and the rest of the episode is about trying to get the killer. And Jack believes Rick is attracted to Greg. What is it with you people? If Malone told you to jump off a building, would you do it? Probably, sir, yes. Martin finds trophies, Polaroids in Rick's desk. That sounds like Greg, but I feel like that's probably Rick posing as Greg. During the fight, it is slightly awkward how we can almost only ever see one of their faces because it's the same actor. It feels very rigid. I'm not saying I have a suggestion for a solution. I'm just saying it's a thing. It's a whole thing. And Jack finds a trail of blood, guesses that it's Rick, not Greg, and uses the name Mouse, which obviously Greg wouldn't respond to, but Rick does, giving away it's not Greg, it's Rick posing as Greg. That's a clever, because you don't respond to some, you respond to a nickname even if it's been years since you were last called that, if you were called it many times. But you don't respond if it's someone else's nickname, Trials. And it's about Nazi war criminals and flaws in the justice system. It is an awesome power. Sometimes I forget that those words are old enough that to not always have meant about, like, the ability of flight or other superpowers. Men in my family aren't particularly into the close thing. He stopped in the middle of a sentence only to pick it up 2 days later. And the judge asks Peter if he's afraid. And his attorney's worried they'll suspect Brooks. Horn-rimmed glasses from Heroes, pre-Heroes. That goatee does not look good on him. I'm sorry. I don't think I would think... I didn't think it did, even before Heroes. Because I did watch this episode before Heroes first came on. So, me really digging horn-rimmed glasses came later, but I always thought he looked bad with a goatee. I really like the actors who play both Peter and the judge. And Peter doesn't want to talk about his childhood. Samantha realizes Dr. Rebel is with Peter. And Dr. Rebel is certain that it's not her husband. And Martin is just like, yeah, right. And Dr. Rebel looks through the photos. And Vivian does try to get the judge to not declare a mistrial over the victim's brother talking to Peter. That lawyer's played by Steve from Married with Children. So the Peter's painting. I was gonna say the painting Peter had, but clearly my mouth preferred me starting with the name Peter instead of the word painting. So we realize Peter might be a Nazi war criminal. Now, unfortunately, I had to skip from 21 minutes and 20 seconds in to 26 minutes and 30 seconds in, and then around 27 minutes in to 28 minutes and 10 seconds in. But the rest of the episode I was able to watch. And we see the Nazis take Greta and her family. I told him where you were. You want forgiveness? Get religion. She couldn't give him forgiveness. And the computer predicts what he would look like today. And at Mayhew's place, they find Peter. Nice filming, getting the chessboard reflected in Mayhew's glasses. Peter says he didn't kill him. Peter refuses to help them, and Vivian assures they may still get justice even though they lost Mayhew. And then it's very abruptly and awkwardly cuts to credits. Yeah, very abruptly, awkwardly so, cuts to credits. That's it. And yeah, let's see. So there's stuff in the wrap-up that references stuff that I missed, which, you know, of course. Apparently, like, he didn't directly kill him, but he did tell, like, Mossad or something where to find him, so he is responsible for his death. And you understand why. It is, and Mayhew was like, it was so long ago. Just, yeah. I'm not saying that it, you know, we would still have hated him if he was like, I know, and it haunts me every day. But at least it would have been something. But yeah. And let's see, is he the guy who also plays the president in X-Men: The Last Stand? Again, you know, I quite like. There's a lot wrong with that movie, but I don't think his performance is one of them. Let me just briefly make sure to note that on this show, great actors. Good in other stuff I've seen elsewhere. Excuse me. Oh, I still have some back issues. And let's see. So that's yeah, let me just put it up here. And there. Malone v. Malone. And it's custody battle and a Christmas episode. So instead of a missing person, it's Jack's family that fade away. And they enjoy the whiteboard is empty, that no one has gone missing in New York today yet. And the lawyer starts pointing out all the things Maria did rather than Jack for the girls. So the flashbacks are to experiences Jack had with the daughters and such. The teacher tells Jack where he's been shot when he's late. And Samantha believes Maria's lawyer is just doing his job, but the others don't like him, and you see him decorating the tree. This episode originally aired December 9th, so it makes sense to make it Christmas themed. Man, I really miss playing 90s games that had Christmas themes. Like, you'd be playing, what's it called? Duke Nukem 3D, and suddenly everything's Christmas themed. That's funny. I feel like there's at least some Jazz Jack Rabbit, but I don't remember if it's 1, 2, or both. There never was a Jazz Jack Rabbit 3D, was there? It almost feels like there should have been, but then it probably would have sucked. Rayman, that was already with the second one, wasn't it? So they didn't get to do the thing. Earthworm Jim, that was the third game, so they just call, you know, Earthworm Jim 1, Earthworm Jim 2, Earthworm Jim 3D. Haven't played it. It really seems like it's terrible. I don't like subjecting myself to terrible games. What's it called? There's the I think there's at least some decent Super Mario 3D games. I feel like, was the first one the Super Mario 64? I didn't think that was the terrible game, if I recall. It was a lot better than other ones, but I feel like also Sonic 3D games. I'm not sure I've played a good Sonic 3D game, which doesn't mean they don't exist, but I distinctly remember the first one. Man, that was garbage. So anyway, and Jack didn't tell his father about the divorce, so he finds out by Vivian telling. And Jack's father flirts with Samantha, and she laughs awkwardly. And we get a flashback to Jack and Samantha together. And the colleague they talked about was Maria, since she is also a lawyer. Which, I mean, I'm not saying that they wouldn't do that. A lawyer wouldn't play a game like that with, if he said Maria is coming, I mean, it is within Jack's rights to demand they reschedule, to, like, because he didn't know that Maria would be there. They just, what's the word? Yeah, whatever. It was a surprise, and obviously it's going to make it harder for him to, it's going to make the situation much more uncomfortable for him, and it's not necessary that she's there. She barely even says or asks anything. Clearly she's there so that it would rile him up, because that's useful for her case. And so I guess what I'm getting at is it manipulative of the show? Should the show not do it? I guess ultimately the show does do a lot of these things where, like, suddenly something will happen where it's really, like, it really gets to the audience, so it's certainly on brand. So weird to see them come back from commercial and not print on the screen how many hours a person has been missing. And Vivian and Jack's father talk about Jack as a parent. And we see Kate's 7th birthday. Kate, that's it, right. Because then in the penultimate episode of the season, the John Michael's daughter is named Catherine, not Kate. So it's close, but not quite yeah. And Jack assaults the father of one of the other kids, thinking it's a pedophile or something. Occupational hazard, It wasn't funny at the time, but Tom and I laugh about it now. That's probably good. If Tom still held a grudge, like, that was her 7th birthday, so what was that, like 3 years ago, 5 years ago or something? If Tom still held a grudge, it would get awkward at get-togethers, seriously. And because Jack's mother killed herself, Maria is going to make it look like Jack himself might try to kill himself, and has actively tried. Asked unanswered. I know that that's specifically a lawyer courtroom thing, but I love that as just like if someone, well, I don't use it a lot in real life, but I would like to, like, if someone asks a question and then I answer and they're like, no, but what if, and I'm like, okay, yeah, then I'd go asked and answered. Just because you don't like the answer doesn't mean that I have to, if I don't want to keep talking about it, if you asked a question and I gave you the answer and I don't want to keep talking about it, then we're going to move on. Just, It's a testament to the excellent acting, writing, filming, and editing that this episode is so gripping when so much of it is people talking while sitting still in a room. Even the flashbacks are ultimately not that, like, they're not these huge things. The like, people are upset in them. I guess the most dramatic is when, or one, like, comparatively, flashbacks to missing people on the show. You might see someone get kidnapped, you might see guns, you might even see violence, and the closest this gets to violence is when he tackles, the guy. I do kind of like how they lead into, did something memorable happen? Not really. Was something broken? A camcorder. And just, like, yeah, because if they just came out and said, you assaulted the parent of one of the other children, then the flashback would be a lot less effective because we know going into it. Whereas when we actually see it, for like a second there, we do wonder if the messed up thing that happened was that there actually was a pedophile and the others saw Jack tackle him, but then it's revealed, no, he's not even a stranger. You've met him before, so yeah. And Samantha walks into the same room Maria is in, and Samantha apologizes to Maria. Right, that's not worth much. And Jack's father is standing completely still, clearly feels bad. Maybe the army will do him some good. He's senile, remembering things from decades ago and thinking they're happening right now. It is kind of weird, isn't it, that the human brain is capable of recalling a ton of details about a thing that happened a lot of years ago, but at the same time realizing that thing isn't happening right now. I mean, that's when you would want the details, exactly when it's happening. And the lawyer prods Jack about growing up with his mother. And Maria told the lawyer that Jack's own mother tried to commit suicide and then asked him not to tell his father. And flashback to Jack's mother talking to Jack after the suicide attempt. Both young Jack and young Jack's mother, at the age she was then, look and sound somewhat like Jack, so, the genes being the same, same as or very similar is convincing to the audience. And Jack's mother fades away. And Maria's lawyer gets very confrontational, and ultimately Jack throws a chair through the window. Jack and Maria argue. And Martin is wearing a Sansa's hat with his badge on the forehead and his FBI tag on the side by his right ear. I thought it was kind of sweet when Samantha goes up and, it was just like, I'm happy. Like, you make me really, really happy. That was sweet. I doubt... I guess I shouldn't... Yeah, I won't. And Jack's lawyer talk next to Jack's father, who's asleep on the couch. And flashback to when Jack had one of his daughters, and his father was there happy for him. And they talk about being a father. And Jack asks to speak to Maria alone, and the lawyer doesn't think it's a good idea. I don't know if he's worried he's going to throw a chair at her. I mean, he's not trying to win an Oscar. I think I sound awesome. Maybe you don't like awesome. I gotta rewatch that video. Anyway. The girls belong with you. Please, just leave. They still need a father. We just need to figure this out. So after all of that, that's the resolution. She agrees. Now, but not before all of this. It's just like, this literally could have been handled with a conversation. I get that he is now asking for full custody, but like, as characters on the show, in the episode, anyway, on the show have said, that was the only choice she left him with. It was never see the girls, or only be able to, essentially never, or only, or have full custody. She pushed that choice upon him. That wasn't, he didn't come up with that himself, and maybe she thought he wouldn't, but I do feel like it's, yeah. And I really wish this didn't play into the stereotype of the vengeful ex-wife. There's that snow they were asking for earlier. And Jack sits down and plays cards with the others. You are always welcome. And so this is Christmas plays again, like it did at the start of the episode. Maria being so vindictive comes off as misogynist, and yeah, and here also the vengeful ex-wife trope. I appreciate this break from format. I guess they hoped everyone would be so caught up in the drama and or didn't know or notice the title of the season's penultimate episode, since John Michaels is clearly stated in this episode as Jack's full name. I don't know. I'll admit, the first time I watched that episode, I did not remember that. I did not realize that was Jack until the very, very end, when it's revealed. Four point oh. And let's see, yeah. And it's about the pressure put on teenagers to create students and forego enjoyment to prepare for the future. Pretty sure I've seen Nell in something else. Maybe it was the 4400, which makes it hilarious that this episode is 4.0 because, yeah, you know, two fours and two O's make 4400. I guess, wasn't this around the same time? Or was it, nah, I forget. They do sound a lot like high schoolers. It was kind of awkward how long the whole conversation went on without us seeing the girl standing in front of them, who I guess was the one to tell them about assembly or remind them or whatever. I know she didn't have a line before that point, but still, at least one reaction shot or something. That really is, yeah. Yeah, Brooke Nevin. Pretty sure I've seen her in the 4400 or something like that. Yeah, and she's like in the third I Know What You Did Last Summer, right? The I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. I still say they should have just, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Maybe the second movie should have been like I Know What You Did Summer of '97 or something like that. But I still know what you did last summer, even though it was 2 summers ago. And then I'll always know what you did last summer, although there it is, a different story. So it is last summer, but yeah. I feel like I remember her being pretty good in that as well. I don't think that movie's as bad as other people. I feel like didn't Phalis like absolutely hate it. I gotta say, sometimes I do not understand what it is he hates about some of these movies that he hates. And sometimes, like before he started doing, I forget what it's called now, but that show where he talks about how fun all these knockoff discount versions of toys are. Before that, I really felt like dude's headed for like a heart attack or something. Calm down, please. Stop watching all these movies that make you so angry. But with that show, I stopped watching it a while ago. But I'm, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I'm not into toys anymore. If you are, that's absolutely fine. I'm just not anymore. I'm not saying I'm above it. I'm into stuff that, you know, I'm still, I mean, I'm not currently reading comic books, but when Suicide Squad came out, I read every Suicide Squad book I could get my hands on, you know, so for free via the library. But yeah, it really is. I'm not saying I'm above it. I'm just not interested anymore. And I'm going on talking about this one thing for way too long. Anyway, when I watched that, it was clear that this was something that didn't piss Phalis off. And when like some of his older videos, he just seems so frustrated and so angry at like it's like with Film Brain, and then Film Brain started doing projector reviews, and it's like, oh, thank goodness he doesn't hate everything he watches. You know, I get it. It's the show's called Bad Movie Beatdown. It really does get like after a while, okay, I get it. You really, really hate these movies. It's like I just feel like every so like not to toot my own horn, because I'm not limber enough to do that. I used to try to recommend a good movie that was reminiscent of a, like, when I watched a bad movie in theaters and I did my vlog where I talk about how bad the movie is, I think I would do it at the very end. I would try to say, if you want a movie similar to this, but that's actually good, here's one that's actually good. You know, I watched the first Expendables movie and came home and said, just stick with Commando. I watched, I want to say it's the 20, yeah, it's probably 2012. Came back and said, if you want a good disaster movie, what was it called? Towering Inferno? Or was it, no, wait, it was the, crap, I'm afraid I don't remember anymore. But yeah, you know, and I eventually stopped doing that. But I do think, you know, just, yeah, like, you know, when you watch, I'm sorry, but when Film Brain talked about how bad that, I think he did at least two of those, like, giant sharks. And it's like, dude, you're not into this. Just watch something else. Like, he was criticizing things that really aren't that big. Like, it's as if he was. It's as if someone is like, if he was the teacher and someone was trying to pass like a really high exam and they turned in absolute garbage. He was just going over every single thing that was wrong about the movie. It's just like, dude, they didn't have a lot of money, so they reused shots. They didn't, you know, they couldn't do effects for that many shots, so some of the time it's other people talking about what we should be seeing. It's not that big a deal. Like, he kind of sounded like someone presented it to him saying that it was the best movie ever made, and he wanted to disprove that guy or something. It just, you know. Anyway, they write ODs on homework drug. That wasn't really what we saw in the flashback. She was just feeling a little bad. ODing isn't burning up. Just, you know, I've never understood why they say burning up. Like, if you said, like, if someone didn't know that phrase and they asked, hey, what happened to that guy I talked to yesterday? And then someone else said, oh, he was burning up. You would seriously think, he caught on fire? What? Just, you know, what happened? No, he was burning up. No, it's like he had a temperature. I get the phrase they had a temperature. You know, that doesn't get, but oh, the burning up. Just, yeah. So that's what she's been doing in the afternoons, writing papers instead of swimming. You're saying she can't be doing both at the same time? Well, not with that attitude, mister. Sounds like Tara is causing a lot of trouble. She became a real terrorist. And Jack's daughter has a boyfriend. And Jack didn't know that OMG stands for oh my god. I mean, I guess back then it was a less, yeah. What the hell do you know? Your best friend's out there with some married guy whose name you don't even know, and you think she's fine? And her face is like, yep. And she wants to have an abortion, but it's too late in the pregnancy. And she talks about how she can't have a baby. I mean, there is such a thing as giving it up for adoption. I just feel like that might have been. I don't think that's even really considered in the episode. I guess that's supposed to be like the audience is kind of supposed to pretend that doesn't exist because that's kind of an easy solution to the problem. Like, don't get me wrong, she would definitely catch crap from her mother and maybe probably other students as well. But ultimately, it's not as though adoption is not like, yeah. So she could give birth at any time. Gotta say, I'm really not loving when they involve late-term fetuses and small children in these. Jack got the avogadros wrong. Are you smarter than a high schooler? I'm sorry, did you just say you're having a baby? I was gonna joke yes and right now, especially based on her breathing, but holy crap, she really is having the baby right now. I know I should have called an ambulance. Yeah, that might have been a good thing. I mean, I don't think that's like they don't demand your name. They're not like we're not gonna send an ambulance until you give us your full name. Just like yeah. Hi, what are you doing under there? I'm not sure. Looking for a contact lens, maybe? Did you forget partway through? Nice to meet you. You want to come out to me and lie to me some more? No, really, it is nice to meet you. She wouldn't tell her soul. I guess she's not a soul teller. Then you made me go to the bus. Sorry. Then she made me go to the bus stop, and no. Then you made me go to the bus stop and followed me. I guess that's one way to put it. Another is that you lied to a federal officer even though you knew that a newborn baby might be in trouble. That is either one incredibly realistic animatronic or they actually have a very small baby in at least some of these shots, in which case I sure hope they weren't actually outside, but that they were like inside on a set and just faked it so that baby wasn't freezing. Excuse me. I think so. I think in the, excuse me, in the shots where you can see enough of it that it needs to look convincing, I don't think you see like there's some brick near that's from a wall that might be difficult to fake inside, but no, the shots that are close up, I really do think that yeah, I've, I'm almost certain it's like straight up illegal to have a because the baby isn't really properly covered or anything. And they find her by the swimming pool, which immediately makes you wonder if she is or was going to throw that baby in the water, in which case it would probably be impossible to save its life with such tiny lungs that would very quickly fill with water. They really didn't have to put her in this kind of situation. This feels very exploitative, however you pronounce that word. I just fed her. Is that true or are you lying? Is that a fed or lying? And Jack reassures her that her mother loves her. And we see her reunited with her mother, and the mother thanks Jack. Excuse me. Penitence. And this episode is about hardened men in prison who may or may not have been hard before they were put in prison. And the sister believes that the brother didn't break out of prison and wants them to investigate him as a missing person. Stranger things have happened. Again, obviously this is completely coincidental, but I watched this episode literally right after watching the most recent pop culture detective video, which was on Stranger Things. And she believes guards hurt him. The character's named James McAvoy. I mean, I know people who say he should go to prison for his performance in Wanted, but other than that, Dean Norris playing a role in law enforcement, as usual. These men have poor judgment. That's why they're here. Let's see. She called me going on about something happening to her brother in the ADR booth. If he's in a gang, how did he get parole? We're overcrowded and he kept his nose clean for the last 6 months. I guess this episode was before private prisons started being such a big thing, or at least before Hollywood started telling the truth about that. And he had to join in order to survive. That certainly is a lot of violence to change from, but it does happen. Bring back your daughter's father, and pause for effect. Once he starts crying and apologizing, he goes full Stallone. Like, it was, I don't know, is that just something that happens to a bunch of guys that, like, yeah, I'm gonna take a guess and say you're Beast. I gotta say, I prefer Kelsey Grammer, Nicholas Hoult, or, well, James McAvoy. Great flashback. James explains what made him the way he is, and it's true of a lot of people who do violent acts. Why do they call you Professor? Because and the rest would be rude. And Matt cut his tattoo off his hand, and the other prisoner hanged himself. I'm in charge of keeping my mouth shut. I used to outsource that, but the other guy was terrible at it. When I heard his name was Kansas, I was trying to come up with a good Wizard of Oz reference, but Vivian beat me to it. The doctor says you're going to be okay. I don't know if that's good news for you or not. And James tries to punch the new guy, but has flashbacks to the guy he killed. I guess the idea is that afterwards he told the kid that's what happened, because otherwise how could he be telling the agents what the guy who isn't telling the story so far? But then he did start protecting him after that, so that was probably the explanation, so the kid would accept that it was true. He said I reminded him of someone. Whoops. Was giving the shoe too much credit. So I guess us seeing the flashback to the guy who killed inside, that flashback was just for the audience's sake. I mean, I guess the agents maybe realize that must be the case. Yeah, it's still a stretch. Maybe the guy who wrote this wasn't completely, didn't know about didn't know enough about the format or something. I don't know. Now, in the flashback, Mac tells Laura he belongs inside, which, some people have an extremely hard time coming out of that situation. And Jack believes Mac was going to kill the woman. Don't you ever get tired of thinking the worst about people? I just get tired about being right. And right before the cut to commercial, Randall apparently shivs Danny, but then immediately when we come back, we see that it was set up so that they won't hurt him. And they found Dolores. She took a day off to go to a spa. Sometimes the show has significantly anticlimactic outcomes. I'm not saying I wanted them to kill the character. I'm just saying that's a bit... yeah. I'm not saying something like that would never happen. It's coincidence. I'm just saying the show, it's fiction. You have control over how many coincidences there are. So, even if there are more coincidences in real life than in fiction, it's going to stand out in fiction because coincidences feel wrong. We're looking for, we expect it to be, there to be a reason. The lizard brain is always going to go in and say, yeah, but something happened here, so there must have been someone who made it happen. That it can't just have happened coincidentally. And they found the other prisoner. The guards went for Mac. They find out Orly is dirty. And Martin tries to appeal to Kansas, who continues being snarky. Let's see, I'm sure he thinks he's funny. I can't deny that I kind of do too. Martin had Kansas kid right out there in the car and he didn't lead with that? Does he just like hearing himself talk? Like, seriously, that is... yeah, and see, that's because they're writing fiction. and oh, they want to start small, and the audience maybe think, they don't have anything, and then they go, then we get a, yeah, talk to Randall, that's his name, don't write it out. And we see a different version of the same flashback. Mac refuses to kill Dolores. Make him see the light, Fish. What if I can't? Then you got a real problem. Train leaves Chicago carrying 30 passengers, and the guards drag him in to see Randall. And let's see, in the flashback, yeah, was James saying he accepted Randall killing him since it would mean that Randall was safe, and James already was, certainly wouldn't be a good idea for him to leave prison. The one thing that makes me consider that maybe that wasn't what was going on here is that he says God loves you, which could be interpreted as don't do this, God loves you, but it could also be interpreted as even if you do this, God loves you, so go ahead and do it, I forgive you. I guess it is probably that he accepts the killing. And we end on Laura reading what James wrote. Excuse me. I don't know if the guy playing the one James killed really loved working, on this, or really hated working on this. I mean, one day his job is literally just to stand in front of some grass and trees while they took a still image of him that would look like a family member took it, and then the other time he's working, his job was to have his face covered in fake blood and beg for mercy in a sequence that was cut down to a few seconds. So that's obviously very easy to do, but maybe also kind of unsatisfying for an actor. But yeah, like, I mean, they might have spent a while trying to get the perfect take of him saying, please don't do this, but that's it, though, it's, yeah. At first you think Randall attempted suicide because without James he had no protection, but I guess in reality, it was that he couldn't live with having killed James. And or maybe he was worried that now that the FBI were involved, it would be discovered and he would be put on death row or something. Volcano. So I guess the idea of the title, I mean, yeah, he's like, coloring in a volcano that I think he drew himself at that one point, but I guess it's also supposed to be like that high functioning autists can like explode very suddenly or something. And the episode is about the challenges involved with autistic people, including high functioning autists, both for the autists themselves and those near them. Now, I was wondering if this was going to be an accurate depiction of autism. Movies and TV shows sometimes get it very right, sometimes get it very wrong. Overall, I would say it's pretty accurate, and I appreciate that it calls out Rain Man as something a lot of people think of when they hear the word autism, even though that is not the reality for every autist. And I'm not sure they ever do use the word Asperger or Asperger's syndrome, Aspie, but then I'm not sure that that fits Ian. I know Aspies and I know high functioning. I'm just gonna say HFAs because my mouth keeps tripping over these words. I know Aspies, I know HFAs, HFAs not having, who don't have Asperger's syndrome. And in some ways, I would definitely say that Ian is more an HFA than an Aspie. So, yeah. And that's, yeah, it doesn't, you don't have to make your story about Aspies, even if, I think, wasn't there like a while where a lot of movies were being made, excuse me, and it was autism, not, sorry, and it was Asperger's, not autism, because people became more familiar with Asperger's and how different it was from autism. I feel like that's a thing, but it's, yeah. Again, as someone who knows people with these conditions, I think that it's it's a pretty good, like, you know, I've already said that it's accurate. I do think that it's also something that could help people who don't know much about it get more of an appreciation, you know, and treat people with it better. Certainly, a lot of people yeah, treat them incredibly terribly. But yeah, I think, and it doesn't feel like exploitative or something. I would say, yeah. Let me just briefly, if you have, if you know and care about someone who has some form of autism, I guess, yeah, the term is somewhere on the spectrum. If there is someone, like, if they're in any kind of institution, or there are, you know, other people taking care of them that you don't know personally, like, I'm not talking about, like, you know, family members or something, but, you know, someone you don't already know before that, make sure that they're actually taking proper care of them, because a lot of them, I've met a lot of people who, I don't know, I guess they felt that their paycheck was specifically for them abusing Aspies as much as they possibly could within legal limits. Yeah, they certainly made every effort to do so. And then when Aspies would criticize, you know, or yeah, ask to be treated better, or tell someone, you know, parents would ask them, please treat my kid better, and it would do absolutely nothing. So, and Ian apparently took off the bracelet so the father couldn't track him. Do you have any idea how many times I've tracked down my son? No, not really. Honesty. Can I ask? I don't really know much about autism, and the writers figure that a chunk of the audience doesn't either, so we'll make Samantha the audience surrogate. And they think that Anu Singh, the helper for Ian, might be involved since she went missing the same day. And they found out one of the museum guards is actually a felon working on a fake name. And Danny approaches John and is all charming, but John does end up running. And Danny's face is like, okay, one of these, these guys never learn, do they? Yeah. Oh, great. One of these, they never learn, do they? That's, yeah. Excuse me. And John claims that he didn't do anything to Ian. He found him already bloody, but to believe him. Anu Singh returns to the apartment, and Vivian approaches her. Anu Singh is really great with Ian in the flashback. And they found one of Ian's shoes. See, make sure that they treat the Aspie or HFA like Anu Singh, or any autist, not just those. And let's see, so Danny and Vivian talk to the therapist, and the test revealed he is not Ian's biological father. I'd like to think you're innocent, but your behavior is erratic, you have means and opportunity, and you now have motive. And flashback to Ian's parents talking about how he's not the real father. Yeah, the evidence is really mounting up against Mr. Norman. The polygraph scene is very tense and suspenseful. Excuse me. Wait, Norville, yeah. The argument between Mr. and Mrs. Norville is very dramatic and compelling. Again, I voice type all of these notes, so sometimes it doesn't recognize the words properly. I did it. It's my fault that I killed Ian. And cut to commercial, if I recall. So the bracelet got stuck between some bars in the basement, and Elliot cut it off, which also drew a little blood from his wrist, making another contrived and anticlimactic explanation. You know, the bracelet was gone, and the blood was found almost immediately in the episode. So we actually thought there was some violence there, and yeah, it's, again, I'm not saying I want violence. I'm just saying the show does, the format kind of, you kind of do expect there to be some violence with a setup like this. When they find blood and they find something, yeah. I do completely believe that Elliot waited this long before saying this because he obviously felt bad. He honestly did think that Ian was dead. And Ian hid on the bus, and they narrow down the area to search for Ian so we can get a tense and suspenseful scene of them looking for him to close out the episode. And Jack finds him. To be honest, I hope I never see you again. Likewise. Now, something that struck me every time I watched this episode is that the opening sequence doesn't really have bullying. The closest it gets is that Elliot is worried that people are staring at them, and that Elliot's father raises his voice at Ian, or, yeah, that works. The way it's filmed, you kind of expect the other students to bully him, either in that scene or later in the episode, or at least in a flashback or something, but it never does happen. Now, so, unfortunately, oh, moment, there it is. Neither rain nor sleet. This episode will not play for me. If I recall, it's one of my favorite episodes. So let me, okay, I'm just going to briefly read internally, not out loud, let's see, the plot summary from Wikipedia. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm afraid I simply don't remember enough details to talk about it in any kind of satisfying way. I think what I said, yeah, it's a great episode. You really empathize with Rosia, yeah, something like that, and yeah, Rosa, right? Anyway, yeah, and let's see, that brings us to Party Girl. And the episode is about young female celebrities and how they treat others, how they are treated by others, and their impact on the world. Very strong characterization of her in the very start. Really get a sense of what she's like as a person, or at the very least how she treats the assistant and behaves about celebrity stuff. And it's obviously not something that makes, the audience isn't, we don't really end up having empathy for her in that scene, other than by virtue of the fact that she's now missing and could be in danger, but it is, and it's, sometimes an episode will open with just very briefly seeing the character and just immediately fading away. I feel like what we get in the opening here is how people think of her. And once we see more of, we realize there's more to her than that. She comes across as not very smart, not very deep, but we do later see that she is capable of depth. She fades away right in front of everyone. Again, that must be green screen, but it definitely is impressive looking. And it's also kind of like literally everyone is looking at her, and then she fades, she disappears, even though people were paying attention to her, kind of, yeah. Very intense flashback to the kidnapping itself, her screaming, the driver being beaten up and threatened with a handgun. Excuse me. This is a private party. Pretty sure I'm on the list, and he flashes a badge. She gets bored. There was this one guy for a couple of months, as long as she sees anybody. And he threatens consequences if the tape gets leaked, and then calls Chelsea empty and a bimbo. That is a lot of fan mail, but at least he tagged it by threat assessment. And Chelsea's parents died when she was little, and the uncle who had custody was not paying attention to her. He was on a yacht instead, so nobody ever really set boundaries for her. And that's how, that ended up. That's something I really appreciate about this show. It's almost always, how did this person become like this? Did missing person become like this, or get into this situation? It makes you empathize. You get into a situation where you empathize with characters you really wouldn't normally expect to empathize with. I really appreciate that about this show. I feel like there are enough shows that are just judgmental of people who are unusual or whatever. Because I spoil her. We all spoil her. We could make a sex tape, post it online here, then you wouldn't have to tell anybody else about it. That's cute. And they force her to read a very denigrating statement about herself. And they point out the video reeks of personal vendetta. Vivian doesn't think very much of Chelsea, and Danny sort of defends her. He can relate to not having anybody around to look after you, and making mistakes because of that. Now, we don't know all that much about Vivian's background yet, but let's see. Unless that was in an episode that wouldn't play for me on these DVDs. But I can imagine she felt a lot of pressure when she was younger to not fall into the stereotype of like a poverty-stricken black person who couldn't take care of her own life, when she was younger. Actually, I guess I'm not entirely certain if Vivian did grow up poor. I just, we know that, Martin didn't. His family was rich his entire life, or powerful at least. I don't know if they're like wealthy, but his father has always had a lot of power. But Danny and Samantha did grow up poor. But yeah, there's a pressure on black people to, what's the word? Like, they have to go, yeah, like if they ever fail, then the people around them don't see like, oh, this person, they tried, but unfortunately they failed. No, they just see another black person who can't take care of themselves. That's how a lot of white people think about black people, and even though it's preposterous. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that in this video. Did I mention, I don't know, I guess it just suddenly, like, kind of came up in my memory randomly. But when I talked about the episode where there's that black guy who's like, is he like a boxer maybe, and like his brother ends up, yeah, his mother ends up killing his brother. That episode opens, or yeah, at least there's so the it's because I was going over, I was trying to figure out what episodes to rewatch for review eventually. Anyway, the what was it? The mother said to the boxer, I put you into this world, I can take you out of it. And by the end of the episode, we realize that is what she did to the brother. Took him out of it. So that's, yeah, it's a like excuse me. Yeah, that's a good setup and payoff. Yeah. Yeah, the guy who approaches Chelsea at the signing really does seem like he might be the one. But it's so early in the episode that it almost must be a red herring. Unless it just takes them a long time to find him. That is sometimes the case. Excellent acting in the flashback, both the guy who confronts Chelsea, the girls. Let's see. Yeah, the girls' shock at him and his monologue. I feel like the guy working at the bookstore is one of the neo-Nazis from American History X. One of the two that stand right outside the door trying to get Danny to come with them to the party. And Samantha sees Vivian taking pills with water. The website has a lot of clips of Chelsea looking bad. 51% want her to die and 49% want her to live. Unfortunately, from around 21 minutes in, this episode does not play for me. The rest of it, I'm sorry, I've tried in several devices, did not play. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to go. I don't remember the ending. So I'm just going to have to go on to the next episode. Hold up. No. Yes, that was intentional. Manhunt. And it's about the sorrow of losing a child and blaming oneself for that. Samantha won't give Martin the sports section, and Martin wants to take her to a game, but she thinks it's too public. I mean, she has a point. Like she says, cameras, Jumbotron. She lays it out pretty well. Let's see. And let's see. Yeah, and if people find out she's been with 2 of the 3 men on the team, that's, yeah. Martin goes for a run and witnesses the episode's missing person going missing. And then he thinks he's the T-1000 and tries to run down a car on foot. Or whatever the term is. Catch up, whatever. You know what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, I guess he can't possibly have actually thought he'd be able. The car was already driving fast when, anyway, always happy to see Dylan Baker. Now, 27 minutes missing. I think this might be the first time we have gotten this kind of, not hour kind of thing. It was the rest of the time it's always hour. It's never been specific to minute, but yeah. I'm with Martin and Jack on this. It really did sound like a father and son. And Jack, of course, asks the question of why Martin is here, since he either doesn't know or is pretending not to know about Martin and Samantha, and Martin had stayed at Samantha's place, of course. And the cop thinks that it's Mike's uncle. Mike? Yeah. Certainly in the flashback, Mike seems completely comfortable with Dylan Baker. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding a way to sit that is comfortable for my back. Jack looks at Samantha and Martin talking. The video game that Brian gave Mike is a collector's item, and his initials were used to buy the video game, and let's see. Yeah, and his name is on the driver's license, and he bought a new truck, something. Yeah. What I'm getting at is they find him. They find out who it is. And Brian has a framed picture of Mike, but also of another kid. And Brian is clearly upset as the boys leave his place, and he refers to them as his boys. Ultimately, it is kind of weird that, I mean, okay, so he's not part of the family. He's not a friend of the family. Okay, I get it's weird that he's spending so much time with them when they're not his family and their families don't know. That's weird. But I mean, I do really appreciate it. At the end of the episode, we by the end of the episode, we know for sure he's not a pedophile. He just misses his dead son. You know, I really appreciate that. Like, I'm pedophilia is horrible, and every pedophile should be stopped from acting out but their sexual desires. But not everybody who likes spending time with someone, you know, they're not all pedophiles. Some of them are just they just miss being around a child, and anyway. Stone just surfaced at a gas station in Westchester, and clearly Brian enjoys spoiling Mike. Very dramatic and intense struggle for the gun. No way, Yahweh. And everybody just assumed that they're father and son because the kid does not seem to be upset to be with him. Great acting by Mike. He really does seem scared of Brian when he, when he like kind of freaks out in the what's it called? Like they're having pancakes or something. That place, diner, I guess, is that what it's called? I haven't been to very many, so I don't know what they're called. You called me Alan a few times by mistake. So Brian kidnapped. He kidnapped Mac on the 2-year anniversary of Alan's death. Brian would not let Alan skate on the lake, and that's why he now spoils Mike, as if he can somehow make it better, bring Alan back. You won't even let me have video games, so maybe that particular video game was something that Alan wanted. That's why he bought the old one instead of the most recent one. And like many kids denied what they wanted to do, Alan went and skated on the lake anyway and died. And Martin believes that Brian is taking Mike to the lake house upstate New York. And Jack tells Martin to stay at the airport, but we have previously seen that Martin doesn't always take orders. In addition to Jack and Samantha, they bring tech guys and Kevlar assault rifles. They're not there yet. I have to admit, I will have absolutely loved it if right then the episode cut to them in the car and Mike asking, "Are we there yet?" 2,058 calls to the directory in that period. Listen, I need to ask you something. Are you at all related to that guy who played Cromartie on Sarcona Chronicles? Because you kind of look like him, but not entirely. And now Martin and Danny are closer to where they expect Brian and Mike to be, so they get to be part of the action. And they find the car with Brian and Mike in it. And Danny wants Martin to just monitor, but Martin goes up to him. Martin gets in the car in front of Brian. I really appreciate how it gradually, the word is escalate, isn't it? Even though technically it's like it's a dangerous situation, but it's not, they're not, there's only the one shot fired and no one actually dies. But yeah, Martin says, "I'm going to go talk to him." And then he opens the door and Brian says, "Get in." And he's like, "Oh, okay," and he proves he doesn't have a gun on him. Great makeup on Brian. All the sweat and the cold has gotten some to him, really heightens the tension. And he feels like he's ready to snap. Martin convinces Brian to let the kid go. Brian defends Mike's father. It's really just, yeah, like, and Brian is clearly going to hurt himself. He said, "Whatever happens, whatever happens, what do you mean?" And Brian tries to get Mike to leave, even claiming that he doesn't care about him. And Brian tries to shoot himself in the head. There's a struggle for the gun. Several seconds pass before we see what happens when Martin comes out of the car with blood on him. it's very convincing that Brian would try to kill himself. He's had 3 months with this kid where he expected to keep being able to spend time with him, and then he tried to take him to the lake house, and then decided to take him to the museum since that was what, he keeps treating him like he's Alan instead of Mike. But then the police stop the car before they get to the museum, and he realizes he's not going to be able to spend more time with Mike, so he decides to suicide. It's just too painful if he can't be around, you know, yeah. And Jack tells Martin he knows about him and Samantha and tells him good luck with it. Which brings us to the episode Lone Star. And it's an episode about Eastern European young women tricked into going to the US where they are forced into prostitution, which they then can't escape, and the pressures on undercover law enforcement individuals who have to go along with some awful things in order to, in the long run, take down something horrible. Danny jokes that Martin and Samantha should move into a place just like the house, and Martin jokes that Danny has to keep working on his hook shot. A shirt with blood on it in the fireplace. I like Logan Monroe in pretty much everything I've seen him in, and yes, that includes Scary Movie. I'm afraid I don't remember her name, but she has like her last name. It's not Wasikowska, but it's somewhat similar. She plays the secretary in this. Everything I've seen her in, I've really enjoyed. See, the thing is, if I call her out, then you know what to look for if you haven't watched that. Yeah, I'm just going to say, she's hilarious on 2.5 Men. I quite like the Jimmy the Tooth actor. You know how women are. No, not really. How are they? And James finds him burning the clothes. I've bought 17 houses in the last 10 years, but I've never seen a half-naked real estate agent burning clothes in a fireplace. I just need to know where to look. About time. I saved you half. Oh. I was talking about the stack of files. Hey, it shouldn't be a big problem. It's not a big problem. And Martin is about to show his badge, but Danny prevents him and plays it as if they're regular customers, which might make the people that are more cooperative. Valerie brings out all the girls. Danny and Martin show their badges. And find out the women are tricked into paying to go to America and are forced into prostitution. I caught her at the liquor mart trying to run off with some trucker. Again, obviously this is a complete coincidence, but literally just the day before watching this episode, I watched Rambo 5, which had a scene very much like this one. Yeah. My husband's name isn't Hamilton, it's Norwood. He's an undercover cop. And another great twist, yeah. They tell Lance they have to wait until they know who's running things. So I did it, and it was hard. That's what she said. And Vivian tells Samantha about the device monitoring her heart. Samantha walked in on her adjusting it, and understandably thought she was wearing a wire. And they find the dead prostitute in his trunk with the paper note, 3 more weeks with the badge on the body. And they pressure Valerie, and she demands protection. Tells them about Nadia's death. I'm not saying I didn't realize how sleazy that boss guy was until I saw Jack and Vivian interrogate him. It's just that this was when I decided to voice type that he's really sleazy. And Pelosi actually thought Lance was cutting him out rather than that he was a cop. He was that convincing. And Lance shot the tires out. Jack and Lance talk. And Lance and Beth are reunited. Again, it really gets to you. He talks about how, they thought, they were running away from this awful situation, and now they're forced to have sex with 10 men in one day, and because he had to pretend that he caught Nadia running away, and then he had to beat her, and yeah, just and again, it's a very important issue. Now, transitions. Just real quick note for review. Handles important issues. There. And it's about how a lot of people refuse to accept transgender individuals, including and especially people close to them. Stephanie starts crying, and I'm like, man, come on, this singing's not that bad. 70 hours missing this early in the episode. And Vivian with her husband at the doctor. Excuse me. Samantha asks Vivian about the test in her heart. Samantha assures Vivian that she didn't tell Martin about the monitor. And Kirk, is that it? Witnesses Stephanie giving $2,500 to a guy outside. And Stephanie was born biologically male, transitioned. Eddie freaks out over it. And Eddie now regrets how he reacted. Promise me that when you do find her, just tell her I wish she had told me the truth right from the beginning, and tell her I want her back. The actress who plays Stephanie does look as though she might have transitioned from male. I don't know if the actress is actually transgender, but yeah. And Jack asks Lisa, the therapist, for a prescription. I cannot believe my back is getting this much crap. Okay. So, yeah, Larry and Lillian is also transition. And yeah, the actor who plays Larry is also convincing as someone who transitioned, in this case from female. And both actors also have voices that are convincing as someone who transitioned. And Robert, the brother, also freaks out Stephanie. I hit a wall. You were gone for an hour. What'd you do? Go 10 rounds with it? And the actor who plays Steven does look a lot like the actor who plays Stephanie. And the parents also take it really poorly. And they find out that Steven wants to transition. The bartender tries to comfort Stephanie. Mr. Eastman also does not take Stephanie having transitioned well. And it turns out Mr. Eastman is abusing his wife. And Dwight was gone for hours. Danny goes looking for the car and finds it. She's alive, and Vivian collapses, and the episode ends. Considering the transgender characters were often punchlines in the 90s and early 2000s into movies and TV, I really appreciate how, what's that say? How sympathetic the depiction of transgender individuals is in this episode, but then that does tend to be the case on this show. And a lot of transgender individuals are abused, verbally and sometimes physically, especially by family and the like, in particular by conservatives. So, again, important issue and dealt with, I think, pretty well. Yeah. And, yeah, you know, the thing with you know, yeah, sometimes people freak out when they realize that the person they are dating is transgender, and it is, you know, and at the same time you can understand why a lot of transgender individuals wait until they know someone before they tell them, because sometimes outing yourself as transgender means that yeah, it means that the other person is going to get violent. So it's a catch 22. Tell them right away, and they might attack you. Tell them once you feel comfortable around them, and they might feel betrayed. Now, let's see. It really is. It is legitimately crazy how much we put, how much emphasis we put on the genitals someone was born with. That really is like I feel like the only reason you should freak out about someone's genitalia is if the is if they're trying to you know yeah like if there's if yeah, okay, let me make sure I phrase this in a way that doesn't come off as hypothetically. If someone tries to rape someone else, then you get to freak out over their genitalia. But other than that, just no. If you like, it's weird that everybody's anxious about something, and yeah, some people are anxious about trans individuals, but just I mean the honestly, it probably is. There's this fear that if you don't conform to the straight, yeah, if if you're not having straight sex, if you're having sex that isn't straight, then some people are going to think of you as less, and just being thought of as less by someone else can make people really freak out. But I mean, just yeah. And anyway, I think I've pretty much. That brings us to Second Sight and the world of psychics, scammers, and fake kidnappings, and worlds. And these worlds do not always, overlap. She could have saved us some time if you just told us where to look. And Samantha does a nonverbal, I see what you did there. Excuse me. Agnes has a burnt doll's head with her name on it in the drawer. Martin recommends an expert to Vivian, but she says she's through the diagnostic phase. And the doctor tells Danny about all the injuries she had, and let's see, and ones that she didn't sustain that particular night. Agnes feels she gave, what's that say? She gave her the wrong financial advice, which she's going to act on. And yeah, and the man confronted Agnes was the nephew. Some people do make decisions like that can affect their long-term financial situation based on tarot card readings and the like, and end up regretting it. So it's again, it's a relevant thing. Ultimately, the episode does say that at least some people have at least some level of psychic ability. Clearly I'm sorry, I don't think I ever caught her name, but I kept just calling her Ang's fellow psychic. She reads Samantha, and it seems like at least some of it, like there's a, it's been ages ago, and excuse me, but I want to say it was maybe Richard Dawkins. He did some videos where he pointed out the methods that, like basically Agnes fellow psychic. It's isn't it what's called a blind reading? I want to say that's what it is. And in real life, in those videos, Richard Dawkins pointed out, well, he saw my age, so he assumed, this and this, and because of, everything was assumption, and some of it was accurate, some of it wasn't. but it was clearly just the guy was trying to scam people. And in this episode, the stuff that she no, she seems like she can genuinely tell things about Samantha. It's, we the audience can't possibly, like, it's not like Samantha was saying or doing things that would reveal those things. So apparently this episode does believe in some level of psychic reading. So it's not saying that it's necessarily wrong to go to a psychic, but it is pointing out some people do regret these decisions. Did they do some really specific kind of sedated dark lighting for when Danny talks to the, yeah, so the woman, the older woman, this kind of supernatural stuff they're talking about? You should probably tell your aunt the truth. She'll never trust me again. Well, that's good. Technically, you're not trustworthy. And Vivian discusses with her husband who should take care of the kids if something happens to both of them. And Samantha is upset with Martin over Vivian. You guys, come with me. I need to check something out. He was kind of giving them an out in case they needed to continue talking. And does that say bangs on the video? And yeah, the cold read of Samantha. And Martin uses Danny's computer, this time actually with permission. And Hilda Cahill is a criminal, they realize. And yeah, and Danny and uses several of her names, saying, I'm confused. Which is your real name again? And Danny says she's entitled to a phone call, but says to the tech to capture the number and not let the call go through. You had her fake a kidnapping. I think flowers would have been more welcome. And Jack tells the father that Agnes has Huntington's, and what does that say? Yeah, it says to call her to have her brought instead of letting him go. And Agnes describes what dying of Huntington's is like and says she realized it when she fell on the stairs, so she wasn't pushed. That was, what does that say? That was a misdirect. Pretty decent. Yeah, for some reason, I said misdirect. What it heard was Mr. Rat. I mean, I guess for some things that would make sense. And Samantha talks to the psychic again. And Jack tells Vivian that it's okay to take time to recover. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about the episode. I think it was pretty good. So, brings us to, is it the Bogie Man? The Bogie Man? I'm not entirely sure. See, if it didn't say man after, I would assume it was Bogey, like Bogart, Humphrey Bogart. But the fact that it has a man after it makes me wonder. And normally I wouldn't pronounce boogie if it only has one O, but anyway. Martin breaks up with Samantha. It certainly does sound like Curtis is guilty in the case of Amber as well as Daisy. And Curtis is played by John Krasinski. All that's missing is the banjo music. I swear to God, if my heart doesn't kill me, these... What? Well, these... Oh, right, tops. Sorry, yeah. The tops of the... She can't get the what's it called? She's having trouble opening the childproof... Oh, for a second. Yeah, there it is. And Vivian takes another call and stops the call with Danny suddenly. Daisy keeps asking the Reverend about Amber. How could you not care? How could this whole town not care? That is how a lot of teenagers feel. Like other people don't care about the things they care about. It's very psychologically accurate writing. And that, of course, that's one of the things I have... It frustrates me. I guess I I don't technically not understand. I do, technically speaking, understand. You know, if we're talking the literal meaning of the word understand, I understand. You know, yeah. Some people don't really accept this, or don't, or act as though it's something teenagers can turn on and off. When you're a teenager, the things that feel most important to you feel like they're life and death. So when other people tell you that they don't matter, you know, it's like if you're, you know, like the lizard brain is reacting as if you're standing there telling the tribe there are lions coming for right here, they're going to eat us all, and the tribe says that can't possibly be true, and they refuse to move from the spot. You know, it feels like just, yeah, it feels like you have to do something. It has to be right now. Now, let's see. And Jack is frustrated the surveillance was mishandled. And it ultimately, it is basically, it's set up for the later reveal that, you know, the sheriff mishandled the let me think, Amber case, I think. Yeah. They find a bloody knife. He sold an 8-inch hunting knife to a 13-year-old girl for protection. That's, yeah. And Vivian is frustrated with Reggie. Sometimes teenagers will act out when their parents have problems. Excuse me. Again, very psychologically accurate writing. You know, it's not that Reggie doesn't care that this is hard on his mother, and it's not like no part of him psychologically understands that, you know, it's basically, sometimes when you're a child or a teenager, it can feel like the only way your parents notice you is if you do something wrong. So he's basically just, yeah, he's not trying to give her a heart attack. And it's not that he doesn't care that she's having heart problems. Isn't that another flashback where the audience sees something that the person describing the flashback couldn't have heard, that the audience then hears? It's, yeah. I guess these are the only 2 examples so far, but it is still a little, yeah. The sheriff kept quiet about the hair because it was his fault that it disappeared. And they find the guy dead. Several of the citizens of the town gang up on Curtis to punish him for Amber and Daisy. Danny and Martin look over all the blonde people that Amber knew. And the blood on the knife, there's a 50% DNA match with Daisy, so the blood may be one of her parents. And Daisy accuses her father to her mother. And Daisy's mother does not know where the father is right now. I told you to look me in the eye when I told you. You need to do the Heath Ledger Joker voice when you tell him to do so. See, again, just, I watched, like, was it the same day or the day before, something, with the, you know, when he's recording the guy and he says, look at me. Look at me. So he actually had molested her. You know, he claims only once, and Jack points out that doesn't make it okay. And Thorpe killed Curtis, yet another accidental killing where someone hits their head on something hard accidentally. And Samantha talks to Daisy, relates to her as someone who herself ran away when she was a teenager. Curtis realized he would be the first blamed when Daisy left, and underestimated how bad things would get in response to her leaving. So Daisy felt that no one cared about her being molested by her father, and that turned into an obsession about Amber Bryce. Sometimes teenagers will obsess over the idea of something specific happening that they have to stop, and they feel like they're the only ones who care enough and are able to stop this awful thing. Now, this town could do with a fresh start. So the reason the sheriff was easy on the cop who botched the surveillance was that he himself had botched something before he became sheriff. And it really, yeah, I mean, if he's not holding his own people responsible either, it's going to keep leading to bad police work. Yeah, it's a good idea for him to resign. And Vivian talks to Reggie, and Reggie was acting out because he felt scared and powerless, and that sometimes makes people do self-destructive things. And just make sure that I can tell. There. And we are there. Off the tracks. Raphael goes missing. And Danny wants to become a lawyer. Raphael's fiancée and her brother both insist that Raphael didn't slip back into bad old habits. And Martin and Jack offer to help Danny, and he lets them. And we're told that Raphael was denied the loan, and Mr. Asher explains that management did it due to the background check. Raphael tells me he wants to see his manager. Tells Asher, understandably, this is clearly very personal to Danny, and Martin agrees to go along with what he wants to do. That is a lot of drugs hidden in that door. And we see a flashback to Danny and Raphael's childhood. And Jack and Danny talk about whether he should be on the case. Raphael was unable to buy the shop because he was too late with the money, and he gets very angry. And he showed up with the money at Mr. Peterson's, even though his loan was denied. And Carrie. And Raphael suddenly catches his reflection and sees his father in himself. And Carrie's certain that Raphael is using again. Now, unfortunately, the episode stopped playing for me from 28 minutes in. So maybe it's explained there, but it seemed a little far-fetched to me that Raphael managed to hide that he was using again from Sylvia. I realized that while he was using, he was physically in another place, so she didn't see it. But there are, there are signs, and she would know to look for those signs, so yeah. I don't know, maybe in the 28 minutes, maybe it turns out he wasn't using it. There was just the stuff that made it look like he was using was planted or something. Danny talks to Vivian. Danny never took the bar exam. One minute I'm trying to become a lawyer, and the next minute I needed one. And Danny admits he's one bad thing away from being where he used to be. And yeah, unfortunately the episode did not play for me from 28 minutes in. So I'll just very briefly, I do think it's again one of these kind of contrived, don't get me wrong, the car accident was his fault. And it in part did happen because he was drinking. He hadn't gotten enough sleep, and he was kind of antsy or something, so he started drinking. And it's one of those things, once you start taking sips like that from a flask like that, it's a lot easier to keep going than it is to stop. And he wasn't paying enough attention. He turned the car out and got hit by another car. And yeah, he's what's the term? But yeah, the fact that the bottle broke, so he's got liquor all over himself, in addition to being drunk, is kind of contrived. But overall, it's not as contrived as a lot of other things on the show. He was drunk. He did have too much. Yeah. So there. And John Michaels. One of my favorite episodes. I love the use of David Bowie. I love the twist. So the reason we were hearing the music was that that kid was listening. Cute detail. And the song is old enough that young Jack may well have been listening to that when he was a kid. So that's why he when he heard it on the radio, it brought him back to that, and he imagined himself as a kid standing on the roof listening to it through the headphones. Was he wearing like ancient headphones like he would have been, what it happened like what 20, 30 years ago or something, a while back. So maybe more. I not entirely sure, but yeah. I didn't notice well enough what headphones the boy, as he's listening to the end credits, was listening through. But anyway, so we cut from old age Jack to current middle age Jack, and Vivian comes back to work, which is a big hint that this is not real. Excuse me. And we briefly see John Michael's Scrabble board, and one of the words is Maria. I'm afraid I didn't quite catch the other ones, but another big hint, this is actually Jack. And we see pictures of the daughters. Now, I'm almost done recording, and after that I'll be able to sit in a way that isn't so... This used to be fine for my back. I feel like it's getting harder and harder to find ways that are not painful for my back. I'm getting treatment, not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, so let's see. When Danny says morning, it almost looks like John Michaels reacted to it, which, yeah, since he's Jack, and Jack was the one being, yeah, worked in the same place for 38 years. Certainly sounds like could refer to Jack. And the opening credits promise Veronica Cartwright. I'm sure he made a lot of enemies. Good job of saying lines that could easily refer to Jack, even though the audience doesn't realize yet. A very good job on the prosthetics. You can't quite recognize Jack. No one at the apartment recognized John Michaels. He's too anonymous, like Jack. And Jack confronts the ex-wife, almost as if he's confronting Maria. And, she says he did cheat, and he cheated with the secretary, so someone he worked closely with. And when we, and when we meet her, it is Veronica Cartwright, and her name is Susan, so close to Samantha. And yeah, the ex-wife is named Martha, so not quite Maria. And John Michael's voice is decently different from Jack's. And the daughters are Helen and Catherine. And yeah, I did remember that one of them was named Kate. I'm afraid I just don't remember what the other one was named. Yeah, I'm afraid I simply don't remember. And Samantha says John Michaels deserved being treated badly by Martha. And Jack decides he should be the one going to the strip club, and he brings Samantha, so that's classy. So Jack is going to the strip club that John Michaels was going to, another connection. And Jack recognizes one of the strippers as John Michaels' daughter. And that has to be one of Jack's anxieties, that he wasn't there enough for his daughters so that they end up as strippers and with drug dealers as boyfriends and the like, since they didn't have strong male role model as children. And the pimp, like, spells it out, but yeah, see, when this episode aired, they thought it was necessary to have the pimp spell it out. Since I've seen TV that was made a while after this show, I guess the most recent thing, well, yeah, there's 2.5 Men, the Transport of the series, and Dexter. Those, those shows ended fairly recently, more recently than this show, anyway. And yeah, let me think. in those, stuff is communicated to the audience faster. So, and I may have also remembered that they spelled it out later. John Michaels pulls a gun on the pimp, and Helen tells John Michaels to leave, and he does. And the pimp explains the girls in the club all have daddy issues, daddy complex, yeah. And Jack confronts the pimp similar to John Michaels doing it. And Helen calls Jack Pops, and Jack does kind of act like he's her father. Crying out loud. Do you ever feel like you could just tell your body, could you just calm down? I'm gonna get into a more comfortable position later. To anyone watching, if you're seriously concerned, don't worry. If I need, like, it's Saturday today, but I have sometimes been able to get treatment Sunday. So if I absolutely need it, and even Saturday, even the same day as I ask for it, so if I need it, I will get it. And Doris tells Jack he's not alone, which is clearly something John Michaels feels he is, what a lot of people who are suicidal feel. And it's, you know, it's something that his mother, I guess, okay, let me make sure to get this right. It's something that he, like, yeah, because the thing is that his mother felt alone. That's, again, hence being suicidal. And yeah, I guess Jack wants, and I mean, and Jack feels alone since his mother died at such a young age, when he was so young. So that's maybe part of it. Yeah. And Jack's father knows John Michaels, another connection. And Jack tells his father, I don't hate you, I never did. But the father doesn't respond. And they say Helen is dead. And the dead Helen opens her eyes and asks Jack, where were you? You know, not, so it's getting closer and closer to being about Jack. You know, at first it was a little more vague, but yeah. And Samantha doesn't believe. Oh, what does that say? Involved with Helen's death. And Jack tries to kiss Samantha, and she pushes him away. And we get Veronica Cartwright, secretary that he slept with, and now he made her recipient of half the money if he dies. And we're told John worked the case of Jack's mother and thought that it was murder, not suicide. So John Michaels never gave up on this case, and now Jack's father said he didn't either, and Jack didn't either, and let me think. Yeah, I forget if I may have voice typed this later, but I'm gonna say it now so I don't forget. Maybe some part of Jack does feel like, not that it was murder, but that his father was in part to blame. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I voice typed, so I'm just gonna leave it for later. You think I'd have a picture there if I didn't love her? My life ended the day she died. It's a government plate. Jack, that's your car. And Jack accuses the other agents of taking his car. I'm afraid he's a lost cause. It's not too late for you, though. So, let's see. Yes, that Jack can stop the things that make him into John Michaels. Some very sinister looks from Danny and Martin. Excellent acting. We've never seen them look at someone like Jack like that before, only suspects and such. And Jack goes home, sets up groceries, sets up the Scrabble, and Ginger becomes beginning on the Scrabble board. And let's see. And yeah, just like, I'm afraid I didn't note what it was, but about 5 or 7 minutes after something, and Jack goes up on the roof where John Michaels disappeared, and John is there. So it's, you know, they don't spend way too long getting to that point, because by then you really do, yeah. And it's like it's like John only appeared on the roof after Jack went to the bird cage. Is that what that thing's called? I don't know. I don't know bird stuff. And John Michaels tells Jack to let go. For the record, I want you to state your full name. Come on, Jackie boy. State your full name. Are you afraid? Is that just your name? And suddenly Vivian is there, pointing a gun at John. This is who you are. This is who you're going to be. And even though Vivian was always shot in the side, Vivian says she's going to die because of her heart. Why didn't you just let me help you? And Danny thinks that Jack was the one who shot Vivian, which in a way he did. Maybe he feels like he didn't take care of her enough, that he should have known that her heart was bad and should have given her time off or something. And John shoots Danny, and Jack tries to shoot John Michaels, but the bullets don't even make him really sleepy, like in... I guess I can't make that. Anyway, some people might get that reference. And John disappears and reappears nearby. For the record, I want you to state your full name. Just admit who you are, or this is what happens. Just say your name. John Michael Malone. And John Michael fades into current Jack. And now that we get another look at the boy with the birds, I guess that is the actor who played young Jack in the episode where we got flashbacks to his mother telling him she won't suicide again. So, yeah. And we see that the people standing by Jack's car, Vivian, Danny, Martin, and Samantha. And see, ultimately, I don't really get, like, so he disappeared into Jack's car with two government people there. So I guess that's supposed to be that Jack got into his own car with Danny and Martin. Is that it? I don't know. It doesn't all have to make sense. I still love this episode. This episode was the first place I heard the David Bowie song, and I've loved it ever since. And it's it's such a perfect, because it is this thing of, like, disconnect from, and being trapped, being alone in this situation, that how are you supposed to get out of, And Jack jumps off the roof and wakes up, and the song is playing on the radio. And Doris, who said, who appeared to be like his boss, is actually his mother. And the episode ends on an ominous phone ringing, and we wonder if Jack has learned anything from the dream, if he's going to become John Michaels in his old age or not. And yeah, here we go. On some level, Jack probably does blame his father for the death of his mother. I hear that's something that happens a lot when there's a suicide in the family. That, yeah, some people feel like someone is to blame. Excuse me, I'm just going to make sure to note. I apologize for the dead air. Just gotta make sure to note this. So that brings us to the very last episode, and that's another thing. If this had happened, if my back was this bad, like way earlier in this, but it's the last episode, I might as well finish the video. And again, if it gets insane, I will stop recording. I promise. For the 2 people watching who care. Endgame. Okay. Let's see. I guess I'll skip the notes that aren't really important. I can understand Vivian's anxiety about them stopping her heart. Meanwhile, how badass would it be? She could refer to herself as undead when she came back. Julia is in a very bad position. Maybe Julia's cop boyfriend is the one who went to visit Paige at work. Please don't tell anyone you saw me. Okay. Oh, you don't forget everything I just said, okay? Everything was wrong. Calm down there, citizens. And Paige's sister just got here. You guys want to take her? Well, at least buy her dinner first. And the guy playing Adisa, I want to say that's him, has a better accent than Halle Berry in X-Men 1, but not quite on the level of Black Panther in the solo movie. Black Panther, the characters in Black, not only, you know, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble remembering his name. I'm having trouble remembering a lot of things. Paige is a sucker for strays. I understand the comparison, but it's pretty disrespectful to refer to someone fleeing a dangerous country as a stray. And turns out he's a terrorist. And let's see. Where is Paige Hobson? And make sure you don't answer until people come back from commercial break. I would say you're taking our Second Amendment just a little bit too far. I'd like to say that right-wingers would probably agree, but honestly, I don't think they would unless because these guys are black and not born in America. Now, let's see. I've always liked the monologue about getting shot on the tarmac and who's to blame, you know. The general, Gamba, I want to say, gave the order, but Jack followed the order. It's over. It's over. Is there an echo in here? Echo in here? It is our relief supplies. And he explains that his family was murdered, his youngest brother burned alive, so you can understand his extremism. It is extremism, but yeah. And Paige talks with Malone, so the flashback ends there. You know, that is incredibly heartwarming. Where did you take her? And they have trouble starting Vivian's heart back up, and ad break, of course. And Julia Gomez is dead. And Paige did use the gun to shoot General Gamba. Let's see. After killing Julia, Dornwall contacted Paige, telling her to give up the names of the operation. Or keep killing people she loves. I guess that was my moment. So, a pregnant woman died on the show. If I recall, this is the first one. The other ones did survive. It just, you know, the show was bound to get there eventually. Once again, I find it to be in very poor taste. If you want to have an abortion, the only thing I ask is that it happens before the baby is so developed that it could survive outside of the womb. And if at all possible, do it with the help of a doctor, and after talking it over with a doctor. If there's, you know, a doctor can determine if there might be, what's it called? If complications, I think is the word. But the death of a pregnant woman is really messed up. And yes, that includes when it's a fictional woman and a fictional fetus. And Jack points out, you know, maybe things won't get better in the country. How is Paige? She's not the woman she was when you met her. I really appreciate that he does actually ask. You know, he wasn't just using her. And he does look like he feels guilty. He feels bad that Paige is now a murderer. When, you know, he's standing in the elevator and she, like, passes by. You know, they're perp walking her, I guess, or something. And, yeah. So they did manage to bring Vivian back, but the show kept us in suspense right up before the ending of the episode. Was that, like, 10 minutes where we think she might not have been brought back? That's, yeah. At least we're ending the day on an up note, which is good because I'm 2 days away from retirement, and I can't wait to go back from war and see my girlfriend. Here's a picture of her. So the episode and the season ends on a cliffhanger. Submachine guns fired at the car, and Martin and Danny are transporting Adisa in. First season of the show to end on a cliffhanger, and I mean, if they badly wanted to, I do admire their restraint for the first 2 seasons because, but yeah. And see, when I first watched this, I was fortunate enough that the next episode aired the day after, so I wasn't in suspense for very long. I'm not sure I even realized at the time that it went from one season to another. I didn't have to wait months for. Anyway, great finale, great season. I love this show, and I really hope I'll be able to say that about next season as well, because I'm pretty sure that is when we get. I don't remember her name or her character name, but boy, do I remember her acting. I'll talk more about it when I get to it, but yes, I've said everything that I wanted to about this season, and my back really needs me to change positions now. So, yes, I hope you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I will catch you next time.